Ladies and gentlemen, excuse me, we are just waiting for quorum. We need 3 more committee members before we can begin. Thank you. Members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen, we do have quorum. We'll get the meeting started. Call the meeting to order, please.
Hold on, we don't have Luciani. Where's Luciani?
Oh, yeah, where did,
Here.
pardon?
Just go somewhere with the CAO.
Yeah.
Well, we need him.
He is now in the room. We do have quorum. So I'll call the meeting to order again. I'll ask for any disclosures of pecuniary interest, please. Seeing none, we do have an introduction of a new staff member. Director Giles, if...
Yes, thank you. I would like to introduce Sean Norman. Sean, can you just stand up at the back so people can recognize you? Thank you. Sean has joined us as a senior planner. Sean lives in Grimsby with his wife and 2 young children. He worked at UEM Consultants in Niagara Falls for 5 years, and the last 3 years he worked at Halton Conservation as an environmental planner. Sean has a Bachelor of Science from University of Guelph in Natural Resource Management and a postgraduate certificate that he did at Niagara College for Environmental Management and Assessment. He's a registered professional planner and is certified project manager professional, and we look very forward to Sean working with us in the future, and he's going to provide a wealth of assistance for us, and we'd like to welcome Sean.
Welcome, Sean. And because I forgot to say it, please make sure you mute your devices, because I did hear a device. No, thank you. And we do have a delegation, and I will call Dr. Dan Patterson, President of Niagara College, Mr. Greg Medulin, Vice President of External Relations at Niagara College, and Mark Nantel, Associate Vice President of Research and Innovation. And I guess, Mr. Patterson, you'll be doing the presentation.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon, everyone. And I appreciate the opportunity to present our project, and I respect the importance of staying within the time allocation. I know this is a very serious part of the protocol, so I will move rather quickly to make sure that I get through the presentation. But I am delighted to address, Selena, your committee, and over the past years I have volunteered as a director for the Regional Economic Development Committee for many years, and serving as the chair for 2 years, and I'd like to add that we have got a very strong working relationship with the economic development team here, and I know how important your work is here at this committee. So many of you will know that Niagara is has a strong economic development mission. If you look at all the major sectors of our economy, you will see programs and services to support the Niagara region, whether it's in manufacturing, health, or tourism, or agri-food. And so, and you know, really do believe that the regions that do well is having an unwavering support for the development of the human resource, a highly skilled workforce, will be very key to our sector. And so today we wanted to focus on this very important agri-food sector. It's a sector that is so important to Niagara, and all the literature and the research is suggesting that Canada, and indeed Niagara, can take advantage of some of the great opportunities that are before us. And so our ask today is to support our $1.6 million investment in our agri-food research facility. Niagara College has a very large footprint in the agribusiness, and we really are on the cusp of taking our work to the next level. The enclosed report that Council has outlines how vital the agribusiness sector is to Niagara's economy and how it aligns with your priorities and the work that we're doing around job creation and youth retention. So I won't get into any of those that data. Everyone here knows it very, very much. So our presentation has 3 parts. First, I'm going to have a quick overview of our $65 million campus redevelopment and how important that is to the future of economic development here in Niagara. Then I'm going to ask my colleague Mark Nantel to provide an overview and key objectives of our agri-food research facility, where we'll be asking for your support. And finally, I will get back and sum up our ask and respond to any questions that you may have. So I'm going to really move quickly through our investments that we've been able to secure in the last while to bring members up to date about how significant they are. The Prime Minister visited Niagara College 3 weeks ago, and people had asked us, why did he want to come and visit Niagara College? Well, I think there's 3 quick things that I think are very important. We are considered a leader in the Canadian college system for our learning enterprises, our innovation. We have people from across the Canadian college system that come to see how we've created that culture and the people directed towards linking our graduates to the world of work. So that innovation agenda is very important. Secondly, in order to stay current and leading edge, we call on our private partners and our community partners to invest in developing a highly skilled workforce, and particularly with our recent work in applied research, where we're becoming the R&D component of small and medium-sized enterprises who are trying to start new businesses and work processes, that industry engagement is key. And third, our Board of Governors are composed of very senior business leaders in our community, have helped us forge a strategic plan, and we use the term preemptive, that Niagara College doesn't just anticipate the labor markets of today, but of tomorrow. So we have some great examples. The wine sector in and of itself is a great study of the role that Niagara College has played in its success. Our commercial beekeeping is another one. The renewable energy technician program, the recent foray into commercial cannabis production are all examples of Niagara College seizing that opportunity and having the right team around us to support it. So, we also have recently completed an economic impact study about the impact Niagara College has on its community. Some really interesting data, and I won't get into that at this point, but I just wanted to highlight that we do have that. So our Welland campus, you see the Walker Advanced Manufacturing Innovation Center. Many of you have had the opportunity to visit that. That was partly, and the Mayor of Welland will know, when they decided, General Electric, to locate in Niagara, one of the things that attracted them was the Advanced Manufacturing and Innovation Center. And they're working in there. They've worked with us, and I think it's a great example of industry educational partnerships. And I encourage everyone to go there and see the small and medium-sized enterprises and how we've created a hub of innovation and how the small, medium-sized companies use our facility. The Green Technology Lab is another amazing facility. Again, I can't get into it, but just have to say that we are a leader in the college system around clean technology. This includes electrical charging stations, alternative fuel technology, diagnostic equipment, green technology simulators, and electrical and hybrid vehicles. Again, being on the leading edge of work that's going on in this very important sector of our economy. Student commons and academic training facilities and our student services are all part of an upgrade that we had fallen behind in our work, and now we have made this important investment that has been a combination of private sector investment as well as students and the community. The Welland Development Campus, many of you are familiar with our Canadian Wine and Institute. Our renovations, our artisan distillery program will be coming up, and the Agri-Food Research Complex is the one area that I'm going to be asking Mark to focus on. So some great expansions in an area that's very important to the Niagara economy around food and wine. And our Brewmasters program, again, a lot of important renovations occurring. There you see of our new teaching distillery that will be up and running. And again, I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to give you that overview about the investments we're making here in Niagara and how important your support is. And now I'm going to ask Mark to focus in about this Agri-Food Research and Training Center. So Mark, would you please come forward? Thank you.
Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen. The important bit about the agri-food research and training that we do at the college, of course, is that we want to support the region's business sectors. I mean, 99% of the businesses in Niagara in the agri-food sector are SMEs, small, medium corporations, and there's about, well, we looked at the region's directory of companies and came up with more than 1,200 of them, not counting restaurant chains, that employ more than 25,000 people and contribute $3 billion to the economy of the region. And 39% of the actual soil is for growing people food, or food for people. So massive importance. We want to make sure that we use everything we can at the college to prepare the next generation of employees and workers for those companies. And we've got in the particular project I'm going to show you at least 210, 250 students who will be impacted directly in programs such as Brewmaster, winery viticulture, the distillery program, of course, and the culinary innovation and food technology program. And let me just flip. The important thing is that these companies who work with us are there to develop new products, new processes, new services. And when they are growing like this with new products and all that, they need the students and the graduates to hire. And that's why it's fairly important. And when they can hire from the region, in the region, we get to retain our youth and our family and friends. So this is an idea, a drawing on the top of the building and what it'll look like. It's on the northeast, I guess, side of the college. And at the bottom, you see progress as of last Friday, I believe. So you can see how it's growing up off of the offices there. It should be done soon in the 2018 year, so maybe in the spring. And what we want to have in this building is the specialized training facilities for students, so microbiology lab, chemistry labs for the students in those food and beverage programs, and entrepreneurship spaces. We want to make sure that students who have ideas about starting new companies have a chance to get the mentorship, the connections to investors, and all the information, market information they need to set themselves up and their businesses. I mentioned applied research labs, and I'll show a couple photos, and also incubation spaces for companies who want to come into the region and establish themselves, but don't yet have a place to be. They can be with us.
I'm going to interrupt for a moment, and I'm going to beg the committee's permission that we allow them to go over the 10 minutes. It's very important information. If anybody has an objection, can you move that, Councillor Easton and Councillor Dart, all in favor? Please, so you have more time.
Much appreciated. Thank you very much. This is an idea of a couple of the labs that we're going to have in there for beverage analysis and beverage processing. Right now at the college, we have great labs for food and beverage research. They're getting a bit cramped because, as you'll see from the slide with all our partners in it, we get a lot of demand for applied research in food and beverage. So what we want to do is take the beverage part and put it in this new building, and therefore expand the availability of our current lab to do food research. So it's not that things are separate, but it make much more space. And in this lab, which is a 3D rendition by an artist of what it'll look like, we have all the chemical analysis equipment to figure out how much alcohol you have in beer, what type of elements make this particular wine better than that wine, and all that. The other lab that we're making sure we build is a beverage processing lab, that is, where we can start making some of the products in small batches so that the companies can test the packaging and how they can increase the shelf life and do various tests like that to make sure that they can actually sell the products outside to their distributors. These are some of the companies with which we've worked in the region. They come from all around the region. I mean, Rich is in Fort Erie, Silversmiths and Virgil. You've got the Smokin' Buddha in Port Colborne. You've got Nuance Wine Supplies in St. Catharines. Welland, we have Iron Will Roth. These are all companies that recently have worked with us, develop new products or improve the current products they have in order to be economically more competitive and hire new people and keep our youth in here. Dan mentioned that the college, Niagara College, is one of the leaders in Canada in the education sector. We're also one of the leaders in research. There are 100 and some colleges across Canada. I think it's 135 or something like that. And we're number 7 out of all this when it comes to research dollars attracted to the region. And there are much bigger colleges in there from bigger places. But here's an idea of essentially how many projects we did last year: 131, 2,000 students. That's 20% of our student population was involved in research projects, helping companies make new products and better products. So I hope that certainly I convinced you that from the applied research point of view, we'll be well served by this new building, and the region will be well served by what we'll be able to do. I asked Dan to take us home.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Mark.
My pleasure.
Okay.
I'll grab my stuff.
Okay. So thank you, Madam Chair, for a few more minutes. So this is the third and last part of our presentation. What we try to do very succinctly by numbers is to show the federal contribution, the provincial contribution, and the Niagara College contribution, and we can speak more to that if somebody has any questions. But I guess we're respectfully asking for $1.6 million for our capital expenditures in this very important and growing area of agri-food research. Again, we believe it very much aligns with the Council's priorities around fostering innovation, investment, and entrepreneurship, building a labor force that is ready, and positioning Niagara globally, as well as the other priorities that the Council's talked about in terms of youth retention and creating local innovation hubs that Mark spoke to very briefly. I guess we also know that the region is facing very tough financial challenges, and understand the competing demands that are always in front of you and some of the leadership challenge. I think there's always a tough balance between a maintenance agenda and making sure that we get on with some of the very important basic things that we're working on, and the transformation needs of moving forward. So, what is the balance? An eye onto the future and a feet on the ground. How does leadership kind of make those decisions? And I can say to you that the work that our team has put together, I can assure you that our track record of success and the close alignment of our mutual objectives that we have with the region over the years, and our working relationship, that this is a very sound legacy investment that I really respectfully hope the Council can deliberate and look at. So again, Madam Chair, thank you very much for this opportunity to present our case for support.
And thank you very much, Mr. Patterson. We do have questions, but first I would like a mover and seconder for the report. It's AD 11, Councillor Dart and Councillor Beatty. And now you can ask questions of both the presentation and the report. Chair Caslin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation today. As you know, but maybe others don't, that I am an alumni, so yes. I'm not sure that's a conflict. I don't think it is, but
no, it definitely isn't. We've checked that.
My first diploma was from Niagara College, yes. Back a little while ago.
Yes.
Not that long ago.
No, that's right.
When we started this term, we put forward a strategic plan that talked about growth and investment. Part of that, imputed in that, would be innovation as well. And when we're talking about investing in innovation, the results of that are nothing short of fabulous in terms of job creation, attraction of business, advanced manufacturing, and putting Ontario, putting Niagara on the map is to being a leader in innovation, and you've shown it in your wine, your beer, your spirits, and all the other technologies, advanced manufacturing that you have put forward. So I have no problem supporting what you're doing here, and will continue to support Niagara College and all that you do. I just want to ask you, are you aligned with Vineland Research?
Yes, and Brock University. I think we're all in this agri-food sector space, and I think you noticed on the presentation that Mark provided that Vineland was actually up there. We do We do co-projects together. We're working very closely. And the work that we do and our funders to date, FedDev and federal and provincial governments, who also fund Brock and Niagara College and Vineland, are very careful, and we're very careful to make sure that it's all very complementary. We just can't afford duplication. And so the work Vineland does around propagation, looking at tender fruit, and looking at the kind of science and research behind it is very different and very complementary to the work that Niagara College does with small and medium-sized enterprises. But it's something that's very much part of our model. I must also add that the dollars that we get from the federal, provincial, and federal government and Ontario Centres of Excellence, we're tracked, so the reference you make to job creation, youth retention, we've got some great metrics, so it's not just talking about doing great things. We have some great body of evidence to support the movement of impact on our economy.
Excellent. And Madam Chair, I want to encourage Niagara College to continue the path that you're on. It's aggressive, it's innovative, and it's cutting edge. And when I talk to businesses, and I talk to a lot of businesses that are asking about Niagara, Niagara College is one of the cornerstones that makes Niagara great. And it's, you know, we are positioned in Niagara region for success in a lot of different measures, and business is now seeing that. And you, Niagara College, are very much a part of that. So please continue the path that you're on, and you have my wholehearted support in your endeavors.
Okay, well, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Chair Caslin. Councillor Beatty.
Thank you, Chair. Caslin asked the question. I had articulation with Brock's Bioscience and Vineland, so thank you for that answer. Specific one, I talked with Patrick Robson about a year ago, or maybe a little bit longer, the possibility of state-of-the-art greenhouse facilities being established. Is that still on the go, or is it a yellow light? Or
No, it's still, we are working on that project. It's a next generation of greenhouse, and we've been working closely with various partners to see and to investigate technology around new lighting, carbon neutral, how we can do a lot of use of our technology rank and technology branch and automation in linking up to some new exciting areas that our current greenhouse just couldn't sustain. So that's we're moving strongly ahead on that as well.
it's good to hear. It's quite exciting as a prospect. Mention to Patrick, if you would, that the Carbon Commission unfortunately has not had people appointed to it, so we have a great backlog. So if that is on the drawing board, the earlier the better.
Thank you.
Even a draft development permit approval would be good.
Okay, very much noted. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Maloney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also was interested in the interrelationship with Vineland Research Station, which you've addressed to an extent. Are there any credits that can be earned at Vineland Research Station which would lead to...
Any credits, I'm sorry?
Yeah, any academic credits or practical credits between with the Vineland Research Station and which would lead to completion of our program at Niagara College?
Okay, good point. And one of the things perhaps we didn't stress enough in our presentation about this investment of the agri-food research, we're talking about increasing the number of young people here in Niagara that can have opportunities in the agri-food sector. So post-secondary programs, our commercial beekeeping program is a wonderful example of some opportunities that we're taking advantage in food innovation. With respect to your question, so Vineland does, and if I understand your question, Vineland does not run post-secondary programs, but some of the people that are doing research there and decide to go on to a postgraduate program at Niagara College or Brock can receive credit recognition. It's called prior learning assessment. So in addition to one's previous grades, you can bring to the registrar the fact that you've done certain studies or research that can qualify you for pathways. Is that answering your question? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Maloney. Councillor Easton.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dr. Patterson, for your presentation. It really is music to my ears. We keep talking about opportunities for young people. We talk to them about retention, but it doesn't mean a thing until you have something tangible to offer them, and that is what you have here. I'm interested to know how many students at Niagara College are from Niagara?
Okay, thank you very much. This is a statistic that I think surprised people. We have 10,000 full-time students at Niagara College. 65% of our students are from this region. And that makes us really bullish about industry engagement. We want co-op students, students to be able to experience co-op. We want new jobs to be created so they'll stay and study here. I think the opposite is occurs at Brock. In other words, I think 65%, 60%, 65% of their students are from out of the region. So that's the difference. So we do, so many people, it's local community colleges as such. It's really important that we establish those linkages with local industry. And so your comment about youth retention is even highlighted for us, and about how important that is, that we have jobs in the region and that we're intricately involved in helping create jobs or sustaining jobs where they're under a challenge. So,
Madam Chairman, I recently read a few notes. They happen to be from Beamsville Secondary School, but it could have been any of the high schools. But DSBN also has these skill enhancement programs. One is welding and one is sports, and agriculture, horticulture is another one. So to be able to articulate the enhancement and continuum of programs to students is extremely important right now. And I see that, I have no question with your partnerships because I'm certainly very familiar with them, but this is really very, very, very good news. Very good news for the hope of youth in this community.
well, Mayor Easton, if I could just say one word about that as well. The relationship we have with the school boards is very strong, and there is a government policy called high-skilled majors. I think that's the program you're referring to.
Yes.
It's a great laddering and a better preparatory pathway for students. And again, we're just breaking new ground in that whole food area of agri-food and opportunities for people to have jobs in this area.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Timms.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I understand the motion is on the floor.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you, and thank you, Mr. Patterson, for your great work in the presentation and developing a very strong business case for what should be taught and done at Niagara College.
Yeah.
If you go back a couple of screens, you had the split between the feds, the province, and the college.
Right. Right.
My question is that, given the strong business case, why didn't the province give you 3.2? And why do you come to the region whose focus is on different services?
Right.
Surely Mr. Bradley would have seen the strength of this case and said, we can give you 3.2. You don't have to put it on the property tax.
Sure.
How did he respond to this request?
Well, I can't speak to Jim Bradley specifically, but it's a really good question. I think I have a good response to it, Bruce. Number one, the provincial funding is by formula. Mm-hmm. In other words, if you're 35,000 students at George Brown, you're getting a heck of a lot more money than Niagara College is getting with its so it's by formula. The second thing that we have been advocating with both federal and provincially, as more concentration happens in the GTA, how do we get a balance on economic development for areas that are outside the GTA, and how creative and innovative we can be? And there's always a push-pull, and people would like to see those balances funding gearing towards. And I think our Walker Center for Advanced Visualization, Advanced Manufacturing is a great example where we worked really hard and convinced the province that we had a business case, and they gave us $4.2 million that they didn't give any other college, because we saw that economic revitalization was absolutely critical. And so here we are today, pushing forward, and as I said in the beginning, there's that push-pull about competing priorities. And they're never easy. And I think I can cite a number of examples where other regions were going through this real dilemma of basic services and basic responsibilities, but they want to invest in education. And they decided that they would be part of that that equation, recognizing that it's not core in terms of some of the basic services, but I think it's core to the kind of priorities that region talks about in terms of a strong labor force and alignment with sectors and promote sectors. So in that spirit, I think it very much fits in with some of I would suggest some of the regions that are doing well, as I said in the beginning, I think are seeing that it's very important that we invest in a highly skilled workforce, and so we're going to put some skin in the game. But I do appreciate the perspective that you bring, and there's no right or wrong, but I can certainly say that if the council and their wisdom decide to support this work, we can certainly show you the return on the investment, that we're true partners, and I think we've demonstrated that partnership year in and year out.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Patterson. I think that would have been and is an excellent argument to put to our 4 local MPPs. It's my understanding of over a long period of time, we have often contributed property tax to Niagara College or Brock University. But I'm reluctant and will not this time, or I think going further, because of what we heard yesterday from our Public Works Department about the huge funding gap for our fundamental function, roads and bridges, sewer and water and waste. We heard yesterday that there is a major gap and that the region and the property taxpayer should contribute more. Like last year, we fought through a whole budget process for 1%, and then we threw in 1% on top at the very end to try and catch up a little bit. And what we hear this year is that we still have a long way to go just to do our fundamental. So it seems to me this Niagara College and universities, post-secondary are fundamental provincial purpose. And all the arguments about why it is good for Niagara is very relevant to our local MPPs, and especially Mr. Bradley, who is the minister in the cabinet. So I will not be supporting this because I think our property taxes should remain focused on roads, bridges, transportation, GO Rail, fundamental services that we have a long-standing obligation to, and where we have a significant funding gap that we're going to be trying to catch up on our turf for years to come. So while we have done it in the past, and it certainly fits our focus on priority on prosperity, it is not something that I see that I want to ask the property taxpayer to contribute to. That's something the province should be doing.
Okay, I think there are 2 or 3 things, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind responding to, and I think one has to do with, of course, the vision of what a region stands for, and to what degree where we're on the pendulum. And there's no right or wrong, but I would suggest the very fact that we have an economic development committee here deliberating by nature draws us into partnerships. Perhaps other areas that you were referring to that need support don't have as many kind of these partnerships. So in order to proceed, I think there's always that push-pull, the degree into which you partner or not partner. On the issue of tax, I don't have the figures in front of me, Bruce, but payment in lieu of tax is that we are taxed as an institution, and we provide, and I don't know if it's in the order of 800, I'm going to have to check, but there's a significant amount of money that goes back to the region as payment in lieu of taxes. And so again, it's all about competing priorities and the vision and the track record. And some regions in this province have decided that in their economic development committees that education is key, and that not to support them may make us fall behind. Your argument also, is that it's not even a half full, half empty argument. It's the degree into which you see an institution like Niagara College that's, I think, making a difference not just here but nationally. It's dependent on industry engagement, regional engagement, provincial engagement, and federal engagement. And again, it's about one's vision and about how we work together as a community. So I do appreciate your comments. I hope you reflect. Our door is always open to talk more and debate and discuss, But I think it's, we've spent a lot of time putting this business case together, and we're very respectful of the competing priorities that you folks are dealing with. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor
Thank you,
Hodgson?
Madam Chairman. The next report we're going to talk about is economic development, free trade zone. The council does focus a fair bit of spending on economic development and a far more direct focus on businesses. And it's, my argument is that we need to stay focused on that and let the province do its job on the colleges and the universities.
Thank you, Councillor. You've made your point.
Thank you.
Councillor Hodgson?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentation today. I don't really have any questions because I think yesterday we had the opportunity to experience the wow factor. And just for my colleagues, I know that you all realize that we are a very active member in a collaborative of the 7 cities and regions from Durham around to Niagara through the Golden Horseshoe Food and Farming Alliance. And so we happen to be have our regularly scheduled meeting of the Alliance, and something up to around 30 members of their stakeholders from education, business, and the municipalities all attended. And believe me, this is a major leader in the agri-food sector, and we don't want to, certainly I don't happen to agree with Councillor Timms that we would want to in any way underestimate the importance of the agri-food sector for Niagara. And also, I do not want to see us kind of drop the ball when it comes to a vision for an agri-food economic cluster in the greater Golden Horseshoe. We are the leaders, absolutely, there's no question. And I can tell you, I know, thank you for coming and speaking to our group for a few moments. But when we had a program of presentations and when we had a tour of the food and labs and the brewery and the winery, and everyone was just completely blown away. And when we heard something like 97% job placement first year for graduates out of the, I believe that was from the girl touring us around the winery facility. Yes. These are pretty good numbers, and I know you mentioned you had those. To my colleagues who wondered about the relationship between the Vineland research, we had a lot of anecdotal stories yesterday, but one, and I just want to tell you, is that, so Vineland Research has been working on introducing to the agricultural sector in Ontario sweet potatoes. Apparently, a lot of work has been done in certain states in the United States, and so they didn't start from square one. They've brought, Vineland Research brought the research to Southern Ontario, and they worked very hard to try to determine which of the new cultivars could be harvested successfully in our climate and with our soils. So who did they turn to when they wanted to turn that into a product? They went to the food labs. I don't have the titles exactly correct here. They needed a way to process, to value add the sweet potatoes so that they could have both the potential for fried sweet potato fries, which we've all had in restaurants, and chips. And so they needed a process where the chips could be successfully dried and then packaged. So Niagara College did the processing successfully. Then they did the packaging. I didn't realize this until yesterday, that all these bags of chips that seem to be kind of light and fluffy, they're not full of air. They're full of the just right mix of the gases that will preserve them on the shelf for the longest possible period of time. This is all happening right under our nose. And so when they talk about a new lab so that they can have added space so we can attract more businesses. So many businesses cannot afford some of the equipment. There's a I'm going to call it a wine tasting machine. Yes. It's not the proper name for it, but what it does is analyzes all of the properties that are essential to have an alcoholic beverage put on the LCBO shelf. The machine is $80,000. But Niagara College has figured out we can train our students how to operate this machinery, how to do this job, why you do this job, and at the same time generate a bit of cash from the smaller companies that could never begin to affordably put new products on the shelf. So kudos to Niagara College, kudos for the vision. We do invest, we've invested and we continue to invest a lot of money in economic development. And quite correctly, I've heard that there have been quite a few direct investments into industry itself, but the industry does not exist alone. And every day, maybe not every day, every week, I hear someone complaining about the mismatch between the skill set that our students are graduating with and the jobs that are there. Well, what I saw yesterday, and I've known for quite a while, is that Niagara College is absolutely addressing and committed to addressing that gap. The industry needs a very proactive education sector if we're going to thrive. There's no doubt in my mind. And so I'm very supportive of this. And I think we all, when we stop to think about, as I think I heard the term, push and pull, all players are not equal every day, but all players are essential every day. And so those that can contribute must. And so we must find the way to balance our budgetary needs to make sure that we don't allow our educational institutions to fall behind when they have identified such huge opportunities that are here today. So thanks for the presentation and thanks for the ask.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you, Councillor, for your expertise on this subject and your interest. Thank you. Councillor Dart.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things to mention. First, Niagara College has a campus in our municipality, and they've been a great partner with us. They're a great resource for anything else that any questions we have. So I can't thank them enough for all that they do for us. We've just decided at Finance Committee last week that we're going to give them some money from the municipality again this year. So we understand the importance of having them there and supporting them. Mayor Easton, you were asking about the kids in that. So we're looking at having a especially high skills major course in Niagara-on-the-Lake at the airport coming up soon for kids who want to get into things to do with airports. So whether it be pilots, mechanics, traffic controllers. We're working with Niagara College on it. It's going to be a long shot possibly to get that course there, but it's something for us to shoot with, and they're at that table. So thank them for that too. My first question is, how many kids are going to will be involved in the agri-food course?
We were totaling that the other day around the agri-food and
we have, thanks, Dan. We have a lot of programs like Baker and Chef Apprentice and all this, who obviously make a big chunk of the 10,000 students we have at the college. In the specific areas of culinary innovation, so I have the numbers here, the culinary innovation, the wine management, the distillery, the brewery, those are the students who will be mostly involved with this new project. And it's about 210, 250 who will be exposed to the equipment, the labs, do the research projects, become better graduates for our companies when they have their new products on the market. So intensely, more than about 200, 250. More generally than how many students?
600 in the whole
Craig
Canadian Food
has?
and Wine Institute.
Yeah, 500 to 600 in the whole Canadian Food and Wine Institute.
Perfect, thank you. Because I know Niagara Falls and Niagara-on-the-Lake, we've got a number of, and as does the rest of the region, but we've got a high concentration of restaurants and accommodations and things, and the number of students, or the number of positions that are out there far exceed the number of people that are capable of being in that field. So we need all the help we can get to train people for that industry. But the other thing, to Councillor Tim's comments, I agree with half of them. The province, well, it's better than nothing. So I think we do need to support the college and any educational institute that has the culture that you have. But the one thing that I would offer to you is that if you want to go back to the province, I would be willing to champion a letter to those four 4 MPPs. I don't know if Mayor Campion, who also has a campus, would like to author it with me, but if you think that will do any good, I'll offer that to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Augustine?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thanks very much for the presentation. For those of us that have served for a little while will remember that when the Economic Development Office was, can I use the word that I think someone used, blown up here at the region, there was sort of four foci that it was suggested that Niagara Region follow. One of them, advanced manufacturing, which Niagara College has done. The other, health and biomedical, which Brock has done. Wine and craft brewing, which you've done, and now agri-food. So I'm very, very pleased that really looking at Niagara and saying that if this is a stool, this is our future, and this is one of the legs of the future. Yes. I think, Madam Chair, Councillor Hodgson has been for many years, and you pointed out, very supportive of agriculture, et cetera, and has been championing agri-food policies and all of that. So it's for many years. So it's great to see that the college has embraced this as one of those pillars or parts of the stool to move Niagara forward. So I'm very, very supportive of this. Now, I do recall that Niagara College did come to the region a few years ago. I think it was in 2009, and I actually asked staff to research this. I thought we gave a commitment, or I was very supportive of a commitment then. So just wondering what that commitment was. So there's a question for staff, Madam Chair, what the commitment was and whether we completed that commitment, et cetera.
Someone has this at their fingertips.
Mr. Oakes, I know, I talked to him earlier.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, we did do some research. In 2009, the region did provide a support program to Niagara College for, excuse me, I'm just scrolling through my, for 1.1 million. That's right. And it was paid in, there was a balloon or a lump sum payment paid in the 2008, out of the 2008, and then a 5-year or 7-year commitment over the course to complete that.
That's great. Thank you very much. So the point, Madam Chair, is there's precedent here that we have been supportive of Niagara College, and I think there was a time before that in 2006 as well. We have been supportive of Niagara College for many, many years. We're supportive of Brock University. We're supportive of Vineland Research. So I'm very supportive as well of helping fulfill your request that you have today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Luciani.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Patterson. My first question was answered with regards to the Vineland Research Center, and I'm very glad that you'll be collaborating with them. But anyways, agriculture, you know, is a huge industry here in Niagara, and this facility will probably put the college at the forefront of agriculture across Canada. As a graduated as a student of Niagara, graduated way back in the beginning, and I'm proud to say that certificate, through that certificate, I developed a lifelong career because of that, because of Niagara College. I am certainly 100% behind this. I think what it'll do for Niagara, the fact of the matter, you did say you have 10,000 students, 65% are from Niagara. So that's an important number that we can say that people, the young folks graduating from Niagara have a great opportunity here in Niagara. I'm a classic case of that, and I'm proud of my years at Niagara and my association with you people over the years. So thank you very much for bringing this here. You have my 100% support.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Campion.
Thanks, Chair. Just a question. I got to get myself caught up here. Are we actually are we dealing with 5.1 ED 11 2017 now? Is that
yes,
motion
we are.
on?
It's on the floor, yes.
Yeah, thank you. It's just confusing because, you know, I want to speak to that motion, but I have no questions.
Right, well,
so
you can speak to the motion, right? That's fine.
Okay, that's great. I appreciate the opportunity. So, fully supportive of this. I think the motion is pretty well written in the sense that what we're saying is we're going to take this request and send it to budget so it can be dealt with in context of the rest of the budget. And I think when you do that, you're going to see that it does become a part of our economic development scheme of things. I can speak through great experience with college in Welland over the years, particularly since I became mayor. I've dealt closer and closer with the college as part of our economic development initiatives. And as Dr. Patterson has indicated, yeah, they were a key component in us getting GE, as well as, just a part of our, I use the college as a tool, but it's one of our tools that we use, a very valuable tool that we use in our economic development package. It adds a lot to what we have to offer. And so by them continuing to add these programs that are very relevant to our local economy and driving our local industries and local economy, we're investing in the entire region. We're investing in the youth of our area and trying to keep them here. So they can come out of this with a job right at home, don't have to move anywhere. That's what we want to do, is have people out of the college and have a job over here, as opposed to walking out of the college and trying to find a job somewhere in Canada or the United States. So I think this is extremely important that we pursue this, fully supportive of it. And I can tell you that, and I think some staff here can attest to this, in Welland we have Northern Gold, which is a very large, very sophisticated food processor making breakfast bars. They have now just added another line onto their facility because of the demand for their product, because of the location that they have here in Niagara. So all of the things come together, the college being one of those tools, that keep people here and have them reinvest and continue to invest in our community. So I look at this as not an expense or a cost to the municipal or to the region, but a great investment in the future of the region. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Maves.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Patterson. Welcome to the region. I know you've been here many, many times over your years, and you're a fixture in the Niagara region, of which we're all very proud. You bring a great deal of pride and good publicity and good reputation to the people of this region, and I appreciate your service to us over the years. But my questions aren't to you. My questions are also to staff. I realize this will go from here to budget to get approved, and you're recommending $400,000 a year. Is this already contemplated in the budget documents that appeared this morning at Corporate Services and at Public Works, or is this going to be over and above what's been presented for information to those two committees?
Yes, please.
Chair, to the councillor, this would be an additional add-on to the 2018 budget deliberations.
Okay, and is there any consideration to given where it comes from? Does it come out of economic development? Does it come out of, where does it come from? DCs and any indication?
Through you, Chair, I'm going to ask Helen to come down.
Or have we just decided that yet?
Can I draw the committee's attention to page 1 of the report, where it says the funding is being requested for the 2018 budget year, but consideration could be given to payments over a 4-year period.
Yeah, so that's why I asked my first question.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Through the chair, as the CAO pointed out, at this point, we have not included it in the capital that's forecast, and the reports that are being circulated to committee for this cycle identify that there was a $40 million funding gap on the capital side, and so it's not included in that $40 million funding gap. Additionally, the operating budgets are being completed, and we could give consideration in terms of funding it as a grant. However, we also identified with the guidance that we had pressures well in excess of guidance. So certainly this was not envisioned at the time that we put forward the guidance, so it hasn't been factored in there either.
Okay, thank you for that.
So if you could just stay, so the document talks about funding it over a 4-year period. Has there been given any other consideration to funding it over an 8-year period, funding it out of year-end surplus, or any comments like that, or has that all been kind of allocated already?
Through the chair, I think because the report was requesting and seeking for the council support to direct it to budget consideration, we haven't had as detailed a discussion in terms of how it would be funded. Certainly, there are a number of different options, and we certainly could consider requesting that the college expand it. We are currently funding the Vineland Research Center. That commitment expires in 2018. Is there a possibility that some of those funds could be directed in 2019 and perhaps delay the contribution? Those are some other things that I've been thinking of as I've been sitting up there. But we certainly would have to have that conversation with staff in the Economic Development Department.
Thank you. Actually, the CAO has a comment as well, Councillor Maves.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair. And in addition, seeing the commentary from this committee and seeing that it may get approved at council, this request. So what we would do it during the 2018 budget deliberations, give you all the options. So look at spreading out for a period of time, possibly looking at reserves. So we'll give you a number of funding options should this report go through and ratified by council. We'll provide some of the options.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
That's it, Councillor. Thank you for your question. Councillor Nunziata.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. So thank you, Dan, for coming forward and bringing this opportunity. And I do believe that economic development is directly involved in academia and certainly our higher learning institutions. So I definitely support this initiative. I do want to thank the work that has gone into this in recognizing that Niagara could be a hotbed for the agri-food industry, and it always has been. So it's nice to see it's getting recognition. Congratulations to Member Bill Hodgson for all his work on this. Certainly he's been involved in spearheading this initiative. I also would like to add that as part of that recognition, that we have to recognize this particular industry, even the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority has realigned its terms of reference for our CLAC, formerly the CLAC Community Advisory Committee, and we've actually added and updated a sector representative from the agricultural and value add industry. So I think it's long overdue that we recognize that we are very unique here in Niagara, and we have to capitalize on that uniqueness. So moving forward, I did see that this is an opportunity for attraction and retention of youth talent in Niagara. So where do you see the biggest market that you could attract talent? Is it from Canada? Is it from North America? As far as coming in and utilizing this curriculum?
Sure. And Mark may be better in terms of the tracking, but I think our first priority is keeping young people here and offering them opportunities, like Mayor Easton said. How do you kind of ladder people from high school to get them into agri-food careers? So that's the priority. In terms of small and attracting more people from the West GTA and other agri-sector areas like Leamington and others where they don't have this kind of programming. From a small and medium-sized enterprise perspective, I think the way we're tracking our food and culinary innovation, we're getting more companies wanting to relocate or at least test products and come to Niagara for that. But I don't know, Mark, if you have anything to add in terms of the target audience and the kind of increase that we expect.
Yes, thank you, Dan. The funding we get to do the applied research to help companies from the region comes from all levels of government, Canadian, Ontarian, and we attract companies from all over the place. We did some project for companies in Vancouver, companies in the GTA, companies in the West, but a lot of them, the biggest chunk of them, are from the region.
Okay.
What we do when we have these companies from the region is we essentially show that they can grow and hire the students who are at Niagara College on site. And so the special programs we have at the college that are essentially nowhere else, like the brewery, which the only other brewing program is in Olds College in Alberta, right? I mean, we are the only college with a 40-acre vineyard, or any vineyard at all, in Canada. So that attracts people from all over the world, frankly. And then when they graduate, there's lots of wineries to hire them around here. So what qualifies us as a special destination, other than Niagara being recognized around the world as a destination in itself, are the quality and distinctiveness, if you want, of our programs, which are very special, very specialized, and not offered elsewhere. So I don't have numbers off the top of my head as to where they come from and how many and all that. We have about 30% of our students are international. So these are students who come to Niagara College at both our campuses. And those are people who are looking for employment after and have a region here with companies that grow. So.
And I appreciate those comments, and those responses were excellent. So thank you, Dan. Thank you for presenting, and I look forward to the ribbon cutting.
Thank you. I'll be brief too, Madam Chair. I'm going to refer Mr. Patterson to what Councillor Augustine referred to as the 4 pillars of economic development. I think this is prime time for Niagara College to be into this. I know that I'm positioning my municipality to be involved in the agri-food industry big time. Yes. I can refer back to companies such as Stampak, right. Obviously the food packaging industry, yes, yes. Also in West Lincoln, the premier kosher chicken, the second kosher chicken processing plant in all of Canada. I know. The other one being in Montreal. So they're going to look after the whole eastern seaboard in the United States. Huge. That is huge. We also have Riverside Poultry, and then obviously Pinty's Foods too as well, who's doing an excellent job, and that company is just on the rise. But what I want to talk about here today is all the supply management that goes along with that too as well. Just recently we were at an open house for a company in West Lincoln called Niagara Pallets. They supply pallets to all the food industry, and they're specialized pallets, and the fact that they have to actually take their pallets and heat them up so it kills all the microorganisms on the pallets, and therefore they can send the pallets off to the beer company and the wine company and food alike. I think of Clark Seeds out in Wellandport, a very huge company that's providing seeds and things like that to all of our farmers. I can think of VRE, who's in the business of the greenhouse racks. So because the horticulture industry is exploding here in Niagara, and there's all kinds of vegetables being grown in greenhouses. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but also I'm very keen to know that the farm-to-table renaissance that's happening here in Ontario. I just heard on the news today that Hamilton is the premier place in all of Ontario to go and eat. No, it's true. The culinary innovation is extraordinary. Yeah. There's no food that you can't get in Hamilton and from any country. It is available there, and the experience is exceptional. And I also want to talk about the specialized high school majors that the school boards are working with, one of them being the agriculture, and Mayor Easton mentioned that too as well. So I see all the stars aligning here. I think the time is right. If I'm the last speaker, I'm going to say this is very much a big part of Niagara and economics going forward, and I commend you for this, and kudos to you. I will be supportive.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
No, you really did scope out things that so many people don't see. That's the engine of economic growth and wealth creation. And more and more companies need research and development. They need a highly skilled workforce. So we're often that secret ingredient to that success. And at some point, I'd love to talk to you more about the culinary destination aspect. And Hamilton is a great case study on what they've done. And I think there are all sorts of potential opportunities for us in that space as well. So thank you.
Yes, of course.
I'll leave it on one last note. One of the biggest problems that we have in West Niagara is that we cannot find enough workers. Stampak is crying for workers right now. VRE is crying for workers right now. Agri-plastics, which is also into the agriculture industry. This is not agri-food, but it's agriculture industry. We cannot get enough high-skilled workers in West Niagara. If you go to the Employment Help Center in both Grimsby, Beamsville, and West Lincoln, you will see the boards filled with requests for jobs, and they can't fill it.
Oh, well,
thank you.
To do more.
Thank you very much, and I'm going to take the liberty of saying something as well. And your 10 minutes has stretched into an hour, and that's a good thing. I don't see any problem with that. I just have to say that it always astonishes me that we chase various industries with great skill and great intensity, and quite often right in front of our noses, It's what Niagara has been known for throughout many, many years, and that's agriculture and all the associated industries. So thank you very much for bringing it front and center to us. It is front and center to our economy. Thank you very much, and I'll call the motion. All in favor? And any opposed? One opposed. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, committee members. Now, I did forget something at the beginning of the meeting, and not unusual for me, I guess, but I wanted to ask someone to move up PDSC, which is a letter from Fort Erie, that's 6.4, to after consideration of reports 36 and 37, if you will, please. Councillor Easton, Councillor Dart, all in favor? And that's carried, and thank you very much. Moving on to ED 14, the Niagara Foreign Trade Zone. Could I have a mover and seconder for the report? Councillor Annunziata, Councillor Luciani. Are there any questions or any comments from, yes, Director Oakes?
Through you, Madam Chair, this just to provide an overview of the direction that we're looking to. When the Niagara Foreign Trade Zone application was originally put forward to the federal government, one of the stipulations that we had included in that report was the actual operations, the long-term operations of the NFTZ were to be put under a corporation, and the Niagara Economic Development isn't a not-for-profit corporation. So at the time, the application was to, and it was done in partnership with the Niagara Development Corridor Partnership, which is in fact an economic development corporation, or not-for-profit corporation, that could house this. And what we're requesting is to formalize that, that transfer and provide an operating grant to the NDCPI to continue and meet our obligations under the application.
Right, and the NDPCI stands for?
Niagara Development Corridor Partnership.
Thank you very much. Yes, we have so many of those. Thank you. Councillor Nunziata.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and congratulate Mr. Oakes for bringing this forward. And as you know, this is a council that's been very, very committed with respect to the FTZ. So this formalizes that designation moving forward. I look forward to the MOU, the language in the MOU moving forward. I look forward to the budget process that is going to be part and parcel of this. But I do want to speak specifically to the bricks and mortar location that's referenced in the report, and that's the town of Fort Erie. I wanted to recognize our EDO, Jim Teebear, for his hard work on this and bringing this shared space opportunity forward. And again, all our Niagara region EDOs that have worked collaboratively on this. So why Fort Erie? And I think I've sang Fort Erie's praises long enough, but even our partners in the community recognize the importance of the FTZ and the economic trade corridors. Earlier last year, I moved a motion to hopefully have Fort Erie, the Peace Bridge, be the first pilot project of the pre-clearance model. Our partners at the PBA, currently with a $100 million bridge rehabilitation in the works right now. That started in 2016. That's due for completion in 2019. So when you look at what the FTZ does, certainly it first benefits the companies already in Niagara, including freight forwarders, third-party logistics, manufacturers, distributors, and processing operations, and all those really unique specialty businesses are located in Fort Erie. I think that's why Fort Erie is perfectly located to house the bricks and mortar operations, and I look forward to supporting this and look forward to what the model is moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do support this report, and I think excellent work in the area of economic development. It is a focus that we have established over a few years, and it's exactly where we should be spending our money. My question is why the need to pull money out of the NDCPI and move it over to the the Niagara Foreign Trade Zone, and what is the effect on the NDCPI of moving $225,000 out of that program?
Through Madam Chair, what we're what we're talking about is putting a budget, an operating budget to the administration of the Niagara Foreign Trade Zone. And what's included in that is the $225,000 provision through our office, Niagara Economic Development. The Niagara Development Corridor Partnership is committed $25,000 per year to make a operating budget of $250,000, which will then, it's intended that that would then go in an application to be matched by the federal government for some marketing and trade programs associated with it. So what we're really talking about is the administration side of the program. There's also a significant amount of private sector opportunity that exists for companies that want to get into bonded warehouses and that sort of thing. That isn't impacted by this. This is strictly how we are dealing with the Niagara Foreign Trade Zone, how we are leveraging some federal dollars, and how we are best positioning the region.
So what if we had 1.6 million to put into this Niagara free trade zone and did not have to pull anything out of the NDCPI? So if you, the connection between the last motion, where we gave money to a provincial college for ostensibly economic development one way or another, very indirect, and now we're scrambling to find $225,000 to properly fund the Niagara Foreign Trade Zone. It's a question to me, it is a question of priority. I think the free trade zone is our business. We've decided it was our business, and we've committed much to it. Same with the Niagara Development Corridor program. It is also a project that we've committed to. And now we're robbing Peter to pay Paul so that we can give the province money to do its job at the provincial college level. So back to my question, what if we had 1.6 million we could commit to the Niagara Foreign Trade Zone?
Just a little correction, Councillor. We haven't given any money to anyone as yet. That's all going to budget for consideration.
It has been supported by this committee to recommend to council, to recommend to the budget committee.
Correct.
Thank
But we haven't done anything yet.
I do understand that, Madam Chair.
Right. Does anybody have an answer for that? Our CAO has an answer for you, Councillor.
Through you, Chair, to committee. That question is simply, it's the priorities of this committee and council, how you want to allocate the funds. That's what the direction we get. We'll give you the informed information. We'll tell you what programs are in play and what to consider, and it's for you to prioritize.
Thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. The question was, what if?
Well,
it appears that we need $225,000 to do a proper job at the Niagara Foreign Trade Zone, and we have to rob another program of $225,000
rob is
in
a
order to do that.
very difficult word, Councillor.
I don't mean to debate with you, Madam Chair.
Borrow.
My question was, what if?
All right, I don't think we want to deal in hypotheticals. Perhaps you could do that at budget.
All right, then explain to me what will be reduced, what programming will we lose in the NDCPI as a result of shifting $225,000 out of that program?
Well, someone does have an answer. Yes.
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. What we're proposing, and it's actually in the report ED 10, we currently provide operating grants to 3 institutions to provide incubation-related programming. Niagara College is one, Brock University is another, and Innovate Niagara is a third. That is a $225,000 contribution between the 3, so we provide $75,000 to each. What we've been suggesting is that money would be reallocated towards the Niagara Foreign Trade Zone, so it wouldn't have an impact on some of the other core funding. And it bolsters what we're trying to do on the economic prosperity agenda.
Right. And that's in a subsequent report, ED 10.
So thank you. I think that makes my point. Perhaps we should reduce our 1.6 million to the Niagara College by 225 so that we can maintain our commitment to the innovation grants that Mr. Oakes just referred to.
Right. Well, perhaps you can bring that up at budget, Councillor.
I'll rely on it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
I'm sure we can. Thank you. Councillor Augustine.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The Niagara Development Corridor Partnership, is it 4, 5, or 6 kind of municipalities and their economic development officers, or plus the region
Right.
that are involved? I'm seeing different things on the internet here. Just tell us a little bit more about that partnership and how it's structured.
Certainly, through Madam Chair. The corridor partnership is the municipalities with full-time economic development offices, and they've basically incorporated a not-for-profit corporation. That would include Fort Erie, Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, Thorold, Welland, and now Lincoln has been added to the grouping. There have been some internal discussions on that, but that is the group that is the corporate body that would be taking on the NF.
Okay, and that includes Port Colborne? I didn't hear you say Port Colborne. Did you say
Port Colborne? Yes.
Port Colborne, okay. Okay, so I guess I got hung up a little bit, Madam Chair, on the word corridor, maybe because of some of the reports here. So it's not just the corridor, it's those with economic development offices. Okay, that's helpful. And the Fort Erie, it's being recommended for the Fort Erie Economic Development Office. Why? Because they have the space, they have the room?
Through Madam Chair, yes, they have the space, they have the room. Effectively, what we're saying is that entity would manage the administration. The location being Fort Erie, there could be multiple locations, and the idea would be if we grow the NFTZ to something more and bigger than what it is, we could have multiple office locations. The key, again, is on the private sector side, where there are opportunities for companies to leverage through bonded warehousing and some of the programs, and that could be anywhere in Niagara.
Right, and I think that's it. That's the key element on this. So for example, when this was announced, when it was launched, it was at a warehouse in St. Catharines, right? And so I don't know how we get around the language of corridor and everybody thinking about corridor. Really, the zone is all of Niagara.
All of Niagara.
So I'll let the economic development officers think about that. We want to make sure that we just don't pigeonhole people in, because, you know, this is part of the item that did bring GE here as well, and that's in Welland. So we want to make sure that all those municipalities all the lands in their municipalities are able to deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no more questions, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? And one opposed, and that's carried. I will now call Khaldoon Ahmed, please, to the podium for a presentation on the Regional Headquarters Campus Master Plan. Go ahead. Thank you. Welcome, Khaldoon.
Good afternoon, members of the Planning and Economic Development Committee. On behalf of our team, I'm excited to present the Regional Headquarters Campus Master Plan, International Place. You were essentially introduced to this important initiative back in March of this year with a presentation that outlined the conceptual design that included the 12 design features as well as the community engagement. The purpose of this presentation is to seek endorsement of the Regional Headquarters Campus Master Plan, to approve the approval to initiate the detailed design phase for Phase 1, the International Plaza, and proceed to a procurement process towards construction, and 3, direction for staff to initiate the facilities plan that will inform Phases 3 and 4 of the Campus Master Plan. The Campus Master Plan is an outcome of the Council-endorsed Brock District Plan of 2016. The plan made a number of recommendations, including the creation of a civic park, which was identified as a priority project. The investment towards the completion of a civic park would contribute greatly to the number of timely initiatives that are set to transform this area around the region's lands into a vibrant, compact, and mixed-use district. As far as this district, it's transforming. There are new student housing, the new successful multi-use path, essentially on Merrittville, has been completed. And in the future, the 406 multi-use path along St. David's Road that will, for the first time, connect the east and west sides of the 406 to provide pedestrians and cyclists with a barrier-free and safe facility. And potentially more transformation with facilities for the Canada 2021 Games. The intent of this master plan is to envision a civic park at the regional headquarters and to identify its various pieces in an integrated way and lay out a path towards its realization. Updating the regional headquarters makes the land more relevant to what's happening around it. The campus master plan successfully achieves 5 goals. The plan supports the goals of the Brock District Plan through the creation of a unique, inviting civic park called the International Plaza. The International Plaza itself reflects the character of the community and tells Niagara's story to a uniquely global audience. The plan creates inviting, safe, and barrier-free pedestrian and cycling-friendly environments around the site, and, such as essentially wider sidewalks, new crosswalk locations, and the many seating areas that are contemplated in the plan. The plan creates a seamless and safe barrier-free experience from the parking area to the main entrance. Equally, the optimization and the availability of parking, vehicular parking, is also an important goal, so that people coming to access services or to do business can find parking. The plan seeks to improve the visitor experience to the site for those coming to access services and for those who come to work here and those strolling through the property. And finally, the plan provides staff with a concept so that future changes to the site, such as new buildings, new parking expansions, and new building systems will be well integrated into a cohesive plan. The campus master plan sets out a phased approach towards the realization of this vision. This slide shows how 4 phases will be required to complete the overall master plan. These phases were developed as outcomes of the May 11th workshop with members of council. The first 2 phases are aimed at completing the International Plaza, which will span the Sir Isaac Brock frontage from Schmoen to Merrittville. Phases 3 and 4 include the back areas, so the main entry areas, the arrival areas, and the surface parking area. These can be completed after a facilities plan is complete. So the report before you would also recommend that staff proceed with completing the detailed design, tender, and construction of phase 1 of the International Plaza. This phase, shown here, will create a multi-purpose paved plaza, bring about the great landscaping and all the many captivating features that are associated with transforming the region's frontage into a civic park. Thank you very much.
Can you just address one question, please, because it has come up? Just your preliminary statement on parking involved here.
Yes, so parking is obviously an issue for this site, and to address this issue through the workshop, actually on May 11th, we essentially decided basically on a plan that would seek to create a facilities plan. So in order to address parking, we need to understand what the parking requirements on the site are.
On the total site.
On the total site, and where best to place those parking spaces so that people can essentially access the services and do business, find the parking that they need, and also for the safety aspects that we speak about in the master plan.
Thank you. Could I, at this point, have a mover and a seconder for PDS 26, Regional Headquarters Campus Master Plan and the International Plaza? Councillor Easton, Councillor Luciani. And any questions or comments from the committee? Councillor Timms.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You did ask the question about parking, and I'm satisfied that issue will be addressed at a later stage. I was asking about parking from the point of view of customer service and accommodating our own staff, because I don't know if anybody's been here and late in the winter, and if you're doing any kind of late shift, you're walking from the back, well, from the headquarters building all the way to that back corner in the cold and in the dark, you find it quite a walk. And there we already have a significant number of staff parking across the street in the Four Seasons parking lot. And one of our goals is safe access and safe parking. So those issues need to be, hopefully will be corrected when we do this second stage. The other suggestion I wanted to bring forward was the Indigenous Plaza at the on Schmoen, halfway down Schmoen. Would there be a problem in putting that at the corner of Sir Isaac Brock and Schmoen? Because I think what you talk about is a Orchard Plaza, which I think has less significance than our Indigenous history. And orchards are pretty well known around here. I'm not sure we need to display them, but the Indigenous history probably could be better served with a position of prominence on that corner. So I know I didn't raise that at the workshop, but I just wonder if that's something to be considered.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think that's a reasonable thing to consider, and we could consider it for sure.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Mays.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, the $1.159 million that is supposed to go into this in 2017 has already been passed and approved in the budget. Okay, I like the plan, and I commend staff for going away in the process they undertook to get input on the plan and alter the plan. I think this is where I would just find my Niagara College money, though. And I'd probably prefer to repurpose this money for the Niagara College thing, which I think would have a much larger long-term economic impact on our community. And it seems like the committee wants to go down that road, and staff's looking for the money. Maybe it can come from there. And then maybe we can do these beautification changes to the region. And there is some efficiencies there gained in the parking issues and so on. Maybe we can keep it on the books and do it in future years. So I'm not going to support what's before us today, not because I don't support the plan, because I think I'd prefer to repurpose that money.
Yeah, right. And so that would be considered, I guess, Councillor, in the budget discussions when we have those?
Would it though? Because if I support this now, like this, and the money's already been, is already there, isn't it just, doesn't it just go from here, get approved by council, and they do number one? Whereas, so it won't be in the budget review, because the budget review is for 2018.
Correct. Maybe I can interject,
Please.
Madam Chair. So what you're seeing as the first phase of the implementation is relying on the money that was approved for the project in 2000 through the 2017 budget process. Subsequent phases, that's what the additional funds are for. If you want to basically not proceed with this and use the funding that was set aside, you would have to basically vote the project down, I guess. and provide direction for the reallocation of those funds. Now, keep in mind, and I'm not sure what all the accounting rules are. This was capital, and I'm not sure where the, what the source of funding is for the for economic development. That's something that the finance folks can comment on.
Councillor?
I like the concept. I like the plan. I don't think we should embark on the plan in 2017. So I'm kind of caught. I don't want to vote it down and have it go away. I want to move it into a subsequent year, and I don't know.
Well, I think, sorry, part of the goal, I'm sure, is having this ready for the 2021 games.
Yeah, it's only 2017, Chair.
Well, it takes a few years, I think. It doesn't happen overnight, Councillor.
In terms of process, if I may, Madam Chair, the next, and Khaldun can elaborate, but we're seeking authorization to proceed to the design and procurement. The procurement, obviously, once that has to be approved by council. So one of the options is to continue on with the detailed design, and then we could take another look at it. That might, because that's going to take a couple months for sure. If you want, we can even put it out to tender, see what it comes in at, and then make a final decision on whether to proceed or not.
I would prefer that, but I'm one voice, and I don't know if
right. Okay, so we have to, anyway, I think, Councillor Easton, yes, we have another, some more
Madam Chairman, I realize it has a name, but that's a working name, I'm assuming. So is there an opportunity for naming rights here?
Yeah, I don't see why not. We branded it, Madam Chair, International Plaza to reflect our the council's strategic direction to be more global, to reflect diversity. So we liked that branding, but there's nothing to stop sponsorship of the International Plaza by a private sector entity. I think that would be a nice touch, actually.
So, Madam Chair, these extended discussions are prudent, and I agree with Councillor Mabes that we should consider all different parts of this, but not without looking at alternative funding options. Right now, we're just looking at all of the money coming from the region, realistically. However, I would hope that that situation could change. This would be a wonderful opportunity, I would think. So when we have that discussion, I hope that we will have all the information, that we're not just going to be looking at one layer of the situation.
An excellent thought, Commissioner.
Yes, so I mean, to make the project real, we designed or anticipating phase 1 to be completely reliant on the funding that was approved in 2017. As the report indicates, we'll be asking for additional funding for subsequent phases. I would suggest that when we move forward with funding asks for subsequent phases, we explore sponsorship opportunities or put in place at least a sponsorship framework. You don't want to engage the private sector in that kind of conversation without it being a reality. I mean, that's not usually a good thing to do.
Yeah. Councillor Mabes, you had another comment.
Make an amendment, move an amendment. I'm trying to, in the spirit of appreciating what staff have done in this direction, I'd like to add part 5, that the project not proceed unless and until is approved at BRCOTW and council. So that just takes it just puts it on delay. We can bring it up, bring the discussion forward at BRCW of, do we want to do it now or do we want to put it out for a year or so? But I don't want to vote against the proposal, so I'd move that motion as number 5.
And you'll second that, Councillor Dart? So actually, that's an amendment, and we'll deal with that first. And it will be part 5. Are there any questions or comments to the amendment? Councillor Timms.
Would then this money be considered unspent and surplus from 2017, and then we can do what we want with it in 2018? Or
Sorry, I missed the question, Councillor.
if this money, which is already committed in our 2017 budget, is put on hold and for 2018, would it then be considered surplus unspent in 2017, and then we're still free to spend it as we like in 2018 when we get that, surplus report?
I guess we'll have to ask. Helen?
Yeah, perhaps Helen, Director of Finance, can respond to that.
Through the chair, as was pointed out, it was a prior approval. So if council's direction or the committee's direction today is to not proceed, those funds are available and unspent, and council could make the decision at the budget review committee to cancel the project and repurpose those funds. That would be available, assuming that this motion goes forward to not proceed until budget review committee of the whole consideration.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you. And then to follow that question, I think the concern is that whatever we do here is done by 2021. When we prepared this report to say proceed today, what was the timeline we had in mind for completion? 2018, 2019?
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe the intent was to have it completed by the end of this phase, mid-2017, phase 2, 2018.
So plenty of time to be ready for 2021. Thank you.
The Commissioner has a comment.
Yeah, and I respect, obviously, the concern for some of the budget pressures we're having, but just want to comment from my vantage point in terms of, we do administer grant programs, and we support a lot of physical development across the region. What differentiates this project is that if we don't initiate it, nobody else will. This is exclusively a regional project, and sometimes, projects in our own backyard or along our own streets fall by the wayside because the other opportunities arise to support other projects, supporting other stakeholders across the region. So just keep that in mind. This is something that I think enhances the image of the region in terms of the regional presence, and of course the folks who are sort of relying on a statement relative to our global brand and diversity. So if we don't do it, nobody else really will. Delaying it, I don't know if that really helps the process. It's just a matter of when. It's not if.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's just an opportunity to weigh our priorities, given the 1.6 million to Niagara College, the various other programs, the public works funding gap, the $40 million funding gap we heard. So I think the notion of dealing with this at the Budget Review Committee makes a lot of sense. There has been a great deal of work on it. I do appreciate the notion that it will present a very grand picture to the world, or the Canada anyway, for the 21 games. But finishing it in 19 instead of 18 is probably, still gives us plenty of time to do that and weigh some of our priorities in capital funding, as I've already said. Thank you.
Councillor Joyner. On the amendment, Councillor Joyner?
Yes.
Thank you.
My question is, how does this interfere with the customer service renovations that the region may or may not be partaking in? Does this have interference in that?
I can't speak to that, Madam Chair, in a lot of detail, although my conversations with the team that is moving forward with that is that this was part of that customer service experience, you know, to make the site more welcoming, to make it a more pleasant experience, to better reflect the brand that we're trying to create, and also the employment experience here. So I don't think it derails it, but this was part of, you know, part of the strategy that they were looking to leverage.
So a supplemental to that, Madam Chair, and somebody may or may not know the answer, does this decision we may embark on derail the walkthrough portion that was going to happen through the cafeteria?
No, the walkthrough portion is, through you, Madam Chair, is still available. The intent with this phase one was to redesign, reconstruct that passageway into a more usable space for pedestrians and visitors and staff.
And again, I know it's in the report. What's the total ask again? What was the?
So phase one is reliant on existing funds that were approved in 2017, 1.139 million.
It's 1.159.
Sorry, 1.159. And this report is basically indicating that to proceed to phase two would require an additional
1.3.
1.3, which we would be bringing forward as a request through the 2018 budget process.
Okay, so thank you for that. So the 1.159 has already been determined in the 2017 budget. The ask here today is for the second phase of 1.3 million, which will be part of the budget deliberations.
Right. Well, the ask, just to be crystal clear, the ask is to proceed with the design and development of phase one using the money that council has already set aside for the project.
Oh,
done.
Okay.
What we're telling you is that we will be bringing forward a business case for phase two for the additional funds in 2018.
For 2018 budget?
Yes.
Yes, gotcha. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Easton? Yeah, of course.
Does not work. Madam Chairman, this has been a very good discussion. The 1.159 million, I think, is important. It's important to proceed with it in order to be able to have those designs available to leverage private sector funding.
Correct.
And on that basis, I support the motion.
All right, are you supporting the amendment? No, the amendment does not say that.
No, I'm not going to be supporting the amendment.
All right, because we're on the amendment at the moment.
But I'm sorry, my apologies.
Right, so if you support proceeding with the project, the way the commissioner has described, then you would vote down the amendment. And I'm ready to call the question. There's no other speakers. And I'm going to ask for a recorded vote, please. On the amendment only.
Point of order, Madam Chair?
Yes.
I know I did exactly what you just said, that you're going to call for a point of order. Are we allowed to call for a point of order
That's
as the
what the
chairs?
clerk just told me. I checked it with her.
Sorry, are the chairs allowed to ask for a recorded vote, even though I did it yesterday? But I'm just wondering, are we allowed to, as the chair?
Through you, Chair, under the Municipal Act, any member can request a recorded vote.
Very good, thank you.
And I just have done that. Thank you.
The vote is open.
Okay. So then what do we do with the rest of them? Yeah, it was carried. So back to the main motion as amended, also recorded. We certainly can. No, still the wrong one.
No. No.
One back. That is not the correct motion. Oh, okay, sorry. See, I can't see what you're doing. So that's a point should just be. Oh, I'm sorry. Our system is frozen. So could you consult your report, please? The motion is there. The amendment was an addition. There are 4. That council endorse the regional headquarters campus master plan as outlined, or and costing information for phase 1 in appendix 1. 2, that council authorize staff to undertake a public procurement process such as a lender to construct the International Plaza phase 1. 3, that council direct staff to initiate a facilities plan to study and recommend areas for additional on-site parking, new buildings, and other features on regional headquarters. And 4, that this report be forwarded to the City of St. Catharines, City of Thorold, and Brock University for their information. And yes, and we'll read number 5 because it was passed, the amendment.
Through you, Chair, paragraph 5 reads that the project proceed on the condition that it is recommended for approval by the, it's up there now, Budget Review Committee and subsequently ratified by Council.
Okay, and it's all in front of you now. We're all thought out. So are you ready for the question? Recorded vote?
The vote is open.
Is mine recorded? And we have a series of yeses. Yeah, please add me. I don't know why I'm not there. Yeah. All right, thank you, Khaldun, very much. The report has been approved with the addition of 5. And
Madam Chair, just to close the loop on that, since we have a little bit of time relative to the Budget Review Committee, I think the idea of seeking some kind of sponsorship or naming is very interesting. And just chatting with Director Oakes, we feel that there are definitely parties out there that would be supportive of that. So what we'll do in the interim is just sort of put that out there to see what the level of interest is. And that might be helpful in terms of our conversation at Budget Review Committee. Is that fair?
yes, that's very fair. Yes, Councillor Timms?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Perhaps we can do this at full council, but item 3 says direct staff to initiate facilities plan to recommend areas for additional on-site parking, etc. We have effectively put that off until after budget as well. Is what would be the consequence of amending this at Region Council and say, go ahead with part 3? Because it really does commit a little bit of funding to the study, but it doesn't commit to building anything. And it just might bring processes.
In for a pound, in for a dollar.
But that wasn't my question, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, if it's the committee's wish, I can provide some feedback in time for council with respect to that question. Once I chat with the facilities folks, because it would not be our commission that would be responsible for that. And you know, I'd like their input.
That would be helpful, Madam Chair. It would inform any kind of amendment we might want to bring at council to what's been recommended by this committee. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Moving on, we do have another presentation on PDS 36, and I would ask for a mover and a seconder for that presentation, please. Councillor Timms and the seconder. It's a presentation before we deal with PDS 36 on the Growth Plan Natural Heritage System consultation.
And 37.
And 37. Do you have a seconder, please? Councillor Easton. All in favor? Thank you. Eric Aunch, welcome. And he will be doing the presentation on both 36 and 37 because they're related.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chair and members of Planning and Economic Development Committee. This presentation will provide a brief overview of the natural heritage system and the agricultural system, some additional background to reports PDS 36 and 37. In May of 2017, after 2 years of consultation, the province released the 2017 Growth Plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe and the 2017 Greenbelt Plan. New policies in the Growth Plan and the Greenbelt Plan indicated that the province would map a natural heritage system for the Growth Plan area, as well as identify an agricultural system for both the Growth Plan and the Greenbelt Plan areas. In July of 2017, the province released draft methodologies and mapping associated with the natural heritage system. This was developed by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. The agricultural system was also released, developed by the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. Municipalities have been given until October 4th to review and provide comments to each respective agency. In the context of the provincial plans, a natural heritage system is comprised of heritage features, areas, and linkages. The proposed natural heritage system for the Growth Plan area applies to lands outside of settlement area boundaries. The system is distinctly different from the Greenbelt Natural Heritage System, which is not the subject of this consultation. The Greenbelt Natural Heritage System was reviewed as part of the 2-year coordinated plan review. The proposed natural heritage system for the Growth Plan area is mapped at a provincial scale as an overlay for development. This means that proposed developments will need to be evaluated against Growth Plan NHS policies, Natural Heritage System policies, as set out in the 2017 Growth Plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. This map shows the proposed natural heritage system for the entire Growth Plan area. This is the map that was initially circulated by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. Taking a quick look at it, purple areas are settlement areas. The dark green is the proposed natural heritage system. The next slide shows a little bit of greater detail for Niagara. So in the Niagara region, this is what the Growth Plan proposed natural heritage system looked like. Again, the green areas are the proposed natural heritage system. There's no distinction on this map between what is a core area and what is a linkage. It's sort of all clumped together as a system. The manner in which the mapping was provided to the region as part of the consultation process hasn't allowed us to contrast what's been proposed against our own regional mapping. So the best we've been able to do is sort of a table exercise of the two maps to see how consistent this is with what we've previously mapped. The staff reviewed the proposed methodology and mapping, consulted with local planning staff, the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, and also received feedback from landowners and developers in Niagara. The following points are the focus of the comments to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. So the first point, Gateway Economic Zone, which is a feature unique to Niagara, has significant natural heritage features identified through this proposed methodology, including existing development and approved and not yet realized developments which have now been identified as natural heritage areas, such as Canadian Motor Speedway. The region has requested that the Gateway be excluded from the proposed natural heritage system methodology. The proposed methodology determines core areas based on vegetative cover as opposed to individual environmental features. This means that a core area could be land with limited to no ecological features, yet it's still identified based on the presence of vegetation. Next point, the proposed natural heritage system places all provincially owned land, including Niagara Parks Commission land, into the system, regardless of ecological value. The proposed methodology suggests that the minimum core size should be 100 hectares. Other plans, such as the Greenbelt plan, utilize a 500 hectare minimum size. This means that the greater number of core areas are identified as a result of being a smaller size. Therefore, the natural heritage system is going to be greater in the 100 hectare core size scenario. The proposed methodology further indicates that when an area is surrounded by a natural heritage feature, so if there's a core and there's linkages surrounding an area and there's a space that might not be identified as natural heritage, if that area is 250 hectares or smaller, it will be automatically included into the system. For comparison, 250 hectares is approximately the size of Virgil. Further, the methodology identifies linkages in a manner that is not consistent with the Natural Heritage Reference Manual or other provincial plans. Primarily, that being that linkage width is fixed at 500 meters and has no relation to linkage length. The growth plan indicates that municipalities can refine natural heritage system mapping, but no additional details have been provided on how this could be undertaken. And lastly, expansions of settlement areas will need to have regard for the proposed natural heritage system overlay. If a settlement area is expanded into the natural heritage system, the system must continue to be protected despite the fact that the balance of a settlement area is exempted from the system. This next slide, as previously mentioned, the Gateway Economic Zone has been impacted by the proposed natural heritage system. So what you're looking at here along the QEW corridor, the amount of green area is now suggesting that that would be natural heritage system, which would require additional development reviews, potential studies to be done. Potentially land is not developable at all. So the region has asked that this Gateway Economic Zone, as identified in the growth plan, be exempted from the proposed system. Moving on to the agricultural system. Policies referencing the agricultural system appear in both the Greenbelt plan and the growth plan. The purpose of the system is to protect the agricultural land base. The proposed agricultural system applies to all of non-urban Niagara. It consists of an agricultural land base map, which I'll show you, an online agricultural system portal. So that has information on the agri-food network, where assets are located, such as food processors, beverage manufacturers, and then it also has implementation procedures. So this map shows the agricultural system as mapped at a provincial scale. In Niagara, the areas identified as either specialty croplands or prime agricultural lands are mostly consistent with the region's agricultural land-based map in our official plan. Again, similar to the natural heritage system, staff reviewed the proposed methodology and mapping, consulted with partners, and received feedback from landowners and developers. Staff from the Ministry of Agriculture and Food have also maintained an ongoing dialogue with staff, clarifying and correcting mapping ahead of the October 4th deadline. The following comments were developed in response to the proposed system. The first one related to the OMAFRA LEAR. LEAR is a land evaluation area review, which was conducted by the province. Unfortunately, when this was done, it was not aligned with the region's parcel fabric, so some of the scoring of where prime agricultural lands are shifted a little bit from where the actual land's been located. In discussions with the province, we've already identified this as a concern and a solution's been provided. Mapping on the following page shows several settlement area boundary discrepancies. Again, this is a result of local official plan mapping, so anyone who has updated their local official plan more recently than the regional official plan has been updated, their mapping may not be consistent with our agricultural land-based map. So again, we've discussed this with the province and identified a solution to this, but I'll still show you on the next slide where those areas are. The proposed mapping and implementation procedures do not recognize site-specific amendments that have been made in the past and up to present time. This includes residential, aggregate, and other existing developments, as well as developments that have been approved but not yet realized, such as Queenston Quarry, which has a regional official plan amendment to permit a golf course, recently was given a change in designation from the Niagara Escarpment Plan. yet the agricultural system maps it as prime agricultural land. So in discussions with the province, we've been looking at a solution for these site-specific amendments, which are not recognized in a provincial scale mapping, but perhaps can be handled through a change in policy language. And lastly, some of the assets, such as wineries, identified through the agricultural system online portal are inaccurate. Through the use of the region's employment inventory, we'll have an opportunity to refine these data points. So this map illustrates the 10 small discrepancies that we were able to pick out between provincially mapped prime agricultural areas and regional mapping. So solutions for each of these have been discussed with the province. Some of them involve the use of our municipal comprehensive review to update mapping. Others involve the province going back and making some changes to the way that they've mapped the system. And that is all of the sort of additional information I was going to provide on the two reports. If you've got any questions, please.
Thank you, Eric. Any questions on the presentation? Councillor Joyner, sorry. All right, Councillor Joyner, go ahead, and then we'll turn to the list.
I can wait.
You can?
Yes.
Well, thank you. Councillor Easton.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Eric, for your presentation. As you and I spoke earlier, I'm interested to know how the public, when they come forward with an application, how they're going to be able to understand the layering that has gone on here. And in addition to that, I wonder what more you can tell us about the portal details. And is there anything about the portal? I don't really understand exactly what it means, except I'm assuming that there's layers of information in there that we may or may not see. I don't know whether proponents of a project will understand those. Can you talk about those two things? What is the portal? How will the proponents of a project be able to understand and know exactly what is involved? Because we don't want to be in a situation where there's an important piece that will add cost, like the archaeological elements. I'd like to avoid that with these changes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor.
Through you, Chair. To the first question on the natural heritage system and sort of understanding the layers. Unfortunately, the way in which the mapping was released, it's not very interactive, and we're not able to apply that data to our own geographical information system in a way that we can analyze where it applies or easily share that. But what we can do in the meantime is, at our pre-consultation meetings when an application comes in, we can review that mapping against what has been provided by the province and provide information to an applicant about whether their property has been captured in the natural heritage system or not. But hopefully moving forward, moving past that, we'll get to a point where we've got this mapping from the province in a manner that can be shared with the public, where they can access it, determine if it's something that they need to be concerned about as they move forward with a development application. So my hope would be, in the interim, we can address it through, on an individual basis as questions come in. In the future, we'd be looking at a way to share that information, maybe through our online mapping that we have on the region's website. To the next piece of that about the portal and what's available on the portal, that is publicly accessible right now. We can share that web link, and there's a number of layers in there. The primary one we were looking at for analysis was the identification of prime agricultural lands, but there is probably 30 or 40 different layers, which include things like where poultry processors are located, where tile drainage is located. So there's all sorts of information that feeds into that. Sort of all of the assets that relate to processing, all of the assets related to primary production. And you can overlay that, and there's even been some spatial analysis that's been done by the province in sort of mapping those areas and where the concentrations are of, say, dairy producers, or where the significant amount of, or where abattoirs are located. So as we look at that as a system, as we talk about sort of an agri-food system and an agri-food network, this portal is very useful in sort of being able to analyze where an asset's located, what's our relation in Niagara to that market, and and in a lot of cases, in almost every one of those layers, as you're turning on an asset, there is something in Niagara. The poultry map analysis that was done, West Lincoln is a huge circle. The Tenderfruit area, we're the biggest. We've got the most wineries. We've got the largest number of orchard areas. When we start to look at processors, there's a layer on there for frozen food processing. There's frozen food processors in Niagara. So it's very interesting to sort of start to see and understand where these businesses are located, and see that they are, in fact, in most cases, there's location of those in Niagara. So, yeah.
Madam Chairman, now I understand. I know now the information that you're talking about. I realize now that what this is about. It is about a initiative that the Greater Golden Horseshoe Food and Farming Alliance was involved in. I believe that's correct. Is that correct? Yeah. Portal information? All right, so Madam Chairman, I have to go back again. So once I know whether I'm in or out, and I have a proposal, where's the list going to be so that I will know what impact, if I'm in the natural heritage, oh, now I keep forgetting the name of it. There's so many different, the natural heritage system. How will I know how being part of that is going to impact my project?
Through you, Chair, the policies that pertain to development within the natural heritage system, they exist in the growth plan right now.
Right.
So there's natural heritage section in here, talks about if you're located within the natural heritage system, the following criteria apply to you. It's really the piece of determining if you are located in the natural heritage system. And right now the mapping is proposed, the methodology is proposed. The discussion has been, shall the province use a 100 hectare minimum core size, or should they use a 500 hectare minimum core size like they do in the Greenbelt plan? And so really we need to wait and see what comes out in the final methodology, what the final map looks like before we start to determine if, before we can really analyze who is in and who is not in, and what amount of land has been captured by the system and what hasn't. And then further, I'm hopeful that the suggestion in the growth plan that there's opportunities for refinement means that if we find something that we don't agree with, or we have reason to believe that something's been captured inaccurately, that through a review that either we use regional data or Conservation Authority data, we're going to have an opportunity to influence a change on that mapping. So I hope, does that answer?
It does, Madam Chair, but this idea of broadcasting a general policy and then figuring out the bumps along the way for highly capitalized industries like agriculture, where there's nothing sure along the way, is really becoming very, very difficult. And I don't know what to say. I don't see this really improving whatsoever. In fact, I worry about the value-added policies that we have in our community. What impact is that going to have on wineries? As time goes by and people want to make changes. I mean, high-value production is what farming is going to have to be about in the future. How difficult is it going to be for anyone that's involved? Maybe it won't impact oils and cereals, those crops. But what is your perspective on the impact that could be, through you, Madam Chair, for those who have value-added activities already.
Yeah.
Yes?
Pardon me?
Do you think that, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I don't think I was clear enough. What is your impression of what the impact will be on existing value-added farm activities?
Well, and I think that, through your chair, is a difficult question because there are certain exemptions for agriculture in the growth plan, and it's, again, going to depend on where it's located and what the mapping comes out at. But there's nothing in here that prevents agriculture, primary agriculture, from happening on the land where something's been identified.
Yeah.
But as we get into siting new buildings, then there's requirements for studies to be undertaken, and then there's setbacks very similar to the way it's been handled in the Greenbelt. The difference being that this system captures land in a different method than the Greenbelt did. So in the Greenbelt, where we understand a setback from a certain feature like a stream or an intermittent stream, in this case we've got a linkage with a buffer on it that might not actually have a feature inside of it. So there's going to be a little bit more work. There's more understanding we're going to have to do when the final version of this comes out to understand how these exemptions will work, how we'll be able to site buildings and such. There's language in here that suggests that through a study we may be able to develop within this area, but it again is going to depend on how the mapping is finalized. But I do understand your concern with respect to value-added agriculture, and then again citing buildings, greenhouses, for example. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I don't believe we're at quorum. I think we have one. Yes, we have quorum. We have one over quorum. We need 10.
We've got 11, Emery.
We have 11. Well, you're going to have to decide this between you. One person can leave. Okay, moving on. Councillor Nunziata.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll try to be brief. Just a few quick points. At this time also, I'd like consideration for PDSC 33-2017, which is the letter from Fort Erie,
Yes.
which actually speaks to the concerns that they had with both the natural heritage mapping and the agricultural portion as well. So my questions are pretty pointed. Now, I'm a fan of the big, public consultation process, but forgive me if I'm a little skeptical and a little jaded. So Fort Erie has put forward some of their concerns, and these are not minor housekeeping amendments. These changes that they're asking for are needed because the end result will be a dramatic impact on their ability to properly move forward. So addressing these concerns, what is the region's position, and what is their role in convincing the province that the recommendations coming from our lower tier municipalities like Fort Erie are appropriate? And that's the first question. The second question is, our chances of success to
Can you speak towards the, sorry.
Our chances of success to actually convince the province that these will impact in a dramatic way and we will get those changes moving forward? That's my first question. Go ahead.
Through your chair, I didn't catch the whole question. If you.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I can address it. I can chime in, Eric. I'll address it. So the process, it's quite formal. So there's a posting on the EBR. So there's a posting on the EBR. So technically speaking, municipalities and the public have the opportunity to provide their comments, their position through the EBR, and then the ministry reviews those comments and renders a decision. That's kind of like the technical process. As an upper tier municipality within the GTA, we have a little bit of leverage in terms of striking up a conversation, which we've done, And I'd say that with respect to the Ministry of Agriculture, there's been quite good dialogue in terms of resolving some of our issues. With respect to the natural heritage system, I think what you heard from Eric is that the issues that we've identified are really quite fundamental. And although we agree with the intent that, you know, the natural heritage system sets out standardized criteria, and there'll be additional guidance provided with respect to, how those natural heritage system polygons are protected. We have identified a concern specifically with respect to the Gateway Economic Zone. Our position with respect to that is that they're incongruent. So really, we need an exemption, if you will, an exemption for to allow us to really capitalize on the economic gateway designation. That has been our position, and that's what we're putting forward through our EBR comments.
Okay, so how aggressive are we being? And I'm hoping very aggressive, because what I don't want to see happening is the exercise that we've seen in the past, where provincial policy has changed, mapping has changed, and it has a direct impact on landowners and historical uses, and all of a sudden, the property owners say, oh my God, thanks for telling me. So now we have that same situation here, and I want to know that we're being extremely aggressive. So I hope you take that away. My second point is we raised this issue at AMO, and we had meetings, and the minister committed to setting up a meeting with Municipal Affairs and MNR. Where are we with respect to that meeting?
So in terms of our dialogue, I would say that we have made the position, our concerns, we voiced our concerns to the minister directly at AMO, and as you mentioned, there's been a commitment to have further meetings. I think what we're waiting on is this actual report to formalize our concerns from a regional council perspective, and then I'll be able to go back to our ministry contacts, and it was actually the Ministry of Municipal Affairs that was supposed to coordinate the meeting with MNRF. And so once we have the direction from the regional council, then we're in a position to comment to the EBR and have ongoing dialogue with MNRF. And hopefully through that process, we'll have some influence with respect to the Gateway Economic Zone.
Okay. So I'm going to leave my comments at that, but I cannot stress enough. This is very, very important. The mapping as it stands right now will have a dramatic effect on projects that have been planned for many years in the town of Fort Erie. I need this to be a priority. We know about unilateral decisions made by the province and how it affects our lower tier partners. I don't want this to be an example of that. So I hope you take those comments away. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Augustine?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Make sure your microphone is turned on, everyone,
Okay.
when you're asking questions.
Thank you. First, can we have a copy of the presentation? I can't find it on the system, so perhaps staff can circulate it.
They will circulate it, Councillor.
Thanks. My question is about the gateway zone and area as well. You know, the report makes a compelling point to say that the natural heritage features in the gateway zone, it's saying exclude them. Yet the growth plan 2017 says the Gateway Economic Center settlement areas identified in this plan, as depicted in blah, 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 have a unique importance to the region of Ontario. Gateway Economic Zone, settlement areas. And the plan that we did back in 2012 are, surprise, surprise, settlement areas. So I personally don't see a discrepancy between what the province has done here and what they've done in their growth plan. So can we hear why we're saying that there's a discrepancy?
Through you, Madam Chair, so we recognize that the NHS currently excludes settlement areas, but as Eric indicated through the presentation, that if there's ever an expansion to a settlement area, you have to address the criteria that's contained in the NHS. So if we ever decide, if the region ever decides to expand the settlement areas to capture the full extent of the Gateway Economic Zone designation in the growth plan, expand settlement areas, then the NHS is a consideration for that. And we have some concerns that it might impact the land that would be available for development ultimately within the Gateway Economic Zone.
Good. Why don't we, like, do we want to pave over all the natural features in Niagara? I don't think so. We have, as I've said before, in our secondary plan for East Fawn Hill, we have natural heritage areas. They are protected. And they were protected after the urban boundary was moved in the year 2000. We have natural heritage features that we're mapping now in East Fenwick. And they're going to be protected. If we expand the urban boundaries, those natural heritage features should be protected. And if there's natural heritage features in urban areas, they should be protected. So I don't see any discrepancy here, and I don't know why we want to pave over all of Niagara, just because we can move a line on a map.
That's a stretch, Councillor.
It is a stretch, but I don't think we should be doing it. So, you know, if you look at that map that was there, there's some beautiful areas. Niagara parks, lands are protected. Do we just want to pave over all that? No, I don't think so. So, you know, I don't know how we do this, how we're going to be voting on this, but I'd like a separated vote on that portion in terms of the economic zone and gateway area.
Sure.
We need to protect those wetland areas, those environmental areas, Madam Chair. The second question is similar in the sense of relating to the, sorry, I'll try to speak to you directly so you can see, relating to the agricultural, no, what's the next one? The other report.
Agricultural system.
Thank you. So there's a number 3 there in Pelham, about which I'm more knowledgeable in some of the other areas, and that includes the airport. If you go to that last map, it includes the airport and a dry industrial area. Part of that dry industrial area, again, it was just thrown on there several years ago, but there are significant environmental features. So I want to make sure when we give feedback to the province on that area or any of these areas that we capture those environmental features and say, you know, save and except for these environmental features, it makes sense to mark these areas. It doesn't look like under number 3 that we've captured those environmental features. Have we captured it there, and have we captured it in other areas 1 through 10?
So, through you, Chair, to the last question on item 3, what is being sort of analyzed in that map is prime agricultural land, how it's mapped by the province versus how it's mapped in local official plans. So in the case of the airport, we don't have the overlay on for the Greenbelt Natural Heritage System in this picture. We're just talking about, in this case, this is rural land that's associated with the airport. It's an existing use that's being mapped as prime agricultural land. So we've been through a process, and this is something that the Ministry of Ag and Food has indicated we can address through the commenting process now to recognize that that airport is not agricultural land, it's airport land. And that's the only purpose to illustrating that as point 3 on the map.
Thank you. But also point 3 includes dry industrial lands. So lands that are zoned industrial, but they're dry. They don't have water, they don't have sewer. But a portion of that maybe as high as a quarter of it is, it's not greenbelt, it's a natural heritage feature or system. So I want to make sure, I guess my question is, are we covering that as we look at this? What about those features? We want to preserve those features. Are we doing that through that process, or is that separate from this?
Through you, Chair, I'd have to refer to this specific natural heritage mapping to know if we're talking about greenbelt natural heritage as it's mapped in the greenbelt plan, or if that area is captured under growth plan natural heritage. I believe, looking at the map, we are in fact talking about growth plan natural heritage. So that will be pending the outcome of the map that is here. So if there are features located on that property, those features will absolutely be identified in the mapping and included in the natural heritage system. But to a point that was discussed earlier, and I think is a big component of how these comments all come together, the growth plan natural heritage mapping is not feature-based. Features are captured, but primarily what we're talking about here are core areas that are identified because of vegetation, not because of the presence of features. Linkages have been mapped virtually using a computerized software program to connect core areas together. There's not necessarily a feature that is linking the core area together. So if there are natural heritage features on the airport land in this 3 area, they will absolutely be captured by the system. But if we're talking about something that is sort of a created core area due to vegetative cover, depending on how the final methodology shakes out, it may or may not be captured.
Okay, they're protected in our official plan, so I just want to make sure that what we're doing here is not going to take them away.
Right, the commissioner has a comment.
Yeah, and with respect, but going back to the Gateway Economic Zone, which was something that you were concerned about, the same thing applies, because lands in the Gateway, in the area between Fort Erie and Niagara Falls that are identified in the growth plan as potentially being Gateway Economic Zone, subject to them being included in a settlement area, are, as Eric said, mapped virtually. They don't necessarily reflect real on-the-ground features. And the corridors, so much of that green area is based on an algorithm, mapping algorithm that connects dots into corridors. So what we're saying is that that's really not fair in the Gateway Economic Zone. We absolutely want to protect core natural areas. There's provincial policy and regional policy to that effect. We just don't want to be undermined, if you will, with respect to mapping that is not scientifically based.
Okay. Councillor? Thank you. Councillor Timms?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did, I think the region did this exercise 10 years ago or something, where we mapped our natural heritage corridors with a focus at that time, I think, on habitat corridors. One that comes to mind was the canal above Lock 7 through Melsward Park into Short Hills. So is this, that the mapping you were referred to? The region has done this. We already have a map of this nature.
Through you, Chair, we do have that mapping at a regional level. So in our regional official plan, we have a natural heritage system identified. This provincial mapping that's being proposed is available online. You can review it and look at these corridors, but there's no differentiation made between what's a core and what's a linkage. It's all sort of, as we see, merged together as sort of one green area. You can, the things that are closest to looking like lines are linkages, but where a linkage stops and where a core area begins is difficult to determine. But we do have a way to look at it, to your question, but again, at this point, this is a draft proposal that may hopefully change through comments provided.
Okay, thank you. In Appendix 2, figure number 3, there's an example where it mentions little to no natural cover within the linkages, which leads me to think, or question, that if an agricultural land, usually, perhaps it's a what I call field crop, like soybeans or corn, The land was farmed and cleared in 1935, whatever, farmed for 50 years, and then let go by the farmer. It grows back a bush. Does that bush then become natural heritage? And the farmer loses, under this new approach, the farmer loses the opportunity to farm if he decides, it's worth going back into soybeans. But this would prevent him from clearing and going back into soybeans.
Through you, Chair. The proposed methodology for the natural heritage system does indicate that one of the data sets they reviewed is Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada aerial photography of crops, and they've suggested that in the methodology, 4 years of non-agricultural activity on a property, so that is a field that's been fallow or dormant for 4 years, automatically is identified as a natural heritage feature. So that area that you're talking about that's hypothetically grown back to brush, or maybe it's just had no activity on it for 4 years and may not be a brushland yet, is identified as core natural heritage. However, there's nothing in the policies of the growth plan that prevent the owner of that land from maybe, planting beans on it again the following year. It's just that once it's been identified, it's likely going to be very difficult in the future to remove that identification from it.
Fair point, and that's a concern I've heard from some farmers. So how does the province intend to inform a landowner that his fouled, wrong word, field, his field that he hasn't done anything with in 4 years has now become designated as a heritage, and that it's going to be very difficult to remove the heritage designation even if he does plow and plant?
Through you, Chair, that has not been identified in the documentation as to how the mapping will be shared. There have been a number of consultation sessions where mapping has been posted, but as far as I know, there's no method in place to identify landowners that they've now been captured in this system.
So has that issue been covered in our response or our comments to the ministry, that Niagara region needs to, we would need to have the province inform the landowner when the province has changed the designation of his land?
That's currently not in the comments, but it could be easily included.
Madam Chair, can I add that as an amendment at this point?
I suppose you can, Councillor. How would you like to read that?
I would move
Oh,
that.
it's not on the floor yet, I'm sorry. We have to get, is this on 36, the heritage plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's the appropriate report, whichever
Yeah,
report we
so
should
could
put
we
that
have a
into.
mover and a seconder, please, for the report? Councillor Easton, a seconder. Councillor Hodgson. All right, so you want to
Amend
introduce
the report by adding in our comments a request that the ministry find a way to inform the landowner of the change in designation of his land under provincial jurisdiction or provincial act.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Maves? Okay. Who's it? Mover and seconder, that's friendly, I think. Oh. Okay. We're just getting the amendment wording.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've seen this happen to farmers and properties across the region in the past, and we've had some experience with it. So I think it is important that we make that request and make that need clear to the province. It amounts to a confiscation of landowners' rights and values and property by adding this designation. And I understand it doesn't automatically do it, but as you say, it's very difficult, and just thinking a couple of steps down the road. This is another burden on a farmer from the province of Ontario. So I'd appreciate the council support for the amendment.
The commissioner has a comment.
Yeah, and I support that amendment, Madam Chair, because, you know, unfortunately, the landowners are the last ones to find out. And the way these things are pushed through the process is that it becomes a provincial policy, and then they push it to the region. We develop some official plan policies or regulations, or maybe it's the Conservation Authority. Then we push it down to the local municipality. They put it in their plans, and it really doesn't, the rubber doesn't hit the road until the local municipality goes to change some zoning, or somebody comes in for a development application. By that time, it's 3-4 years later, and there's nothing you can do, and it just creates a lot of heartache. So that's definitely something that we should be advocating.
All right, so is it ready to be put up, Anne Marie? No. No? Okay, can you repeat the amendment, Councillor? That's a test.
That the region's comments include a request to the province that the landowners be informed of a change in designation or the addition of this designation to their land by the province when the province does it.
Okay. Anne Marie, is that?
Madam Chair, just to follow up, the significance can also translate into a farmer trying to get another mortgage or trying to get insurance, mostly mortgage. Because this, I think, would affect the value of the farmer's land in the bank's opinion. And so it is more than cosmetic designation. It will have impact down the road.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We almost have it. So we're going to have this amendment on the floor. I think we all know what it is. Councillor Jart.
I'd like to just make a suggestion. Is it possible, and I'll to whomever, direct it to whomever you want, Chair, but is it possible to just ask them to take that out completely? Why does it revert back? I've got land on my farm that I haven't used in 10 years. Does that automatically, and I mean literally, it's right in the middle of my farm. Does that apply to this? This makes no sense at all.
Right.
Is it possible for us to ask them to just remove
to eliminate that?
The time frame at all?
Eric, can you repeat that for Eric Patrick?
Is it possible to, in part of this, to just, instead of having them inform the landowner, to just not do this? Like the 4-year term, just eliminate it so that they don't, it doesn't revert back. Just because I've got fallow land for 5 years, I've got Chardonnay grapes that I haven't farmed in 10 years. So it's right in the middle of my farm. So when I want to do it, I'm not going to be allowed to. Is that my understanding of that?
Through you, Chair. And that's one of the points we had in our comments about the ability to refine. And so I'd like to think that in this instance where we've got land that's been identified as fallow and included in the system, and then if it's put back into production, I'd like to think there's an opportunity in there for us to go back and revisit that and have it removed after a set period of time. Unfortunately, that the refinement the ability to refine is referred to in the growth plan. However, the methodology for the system doesn't outline how that refinement can be done, and if that refinement could include a removal of something that's after it's been recognized. So we do have comments in there about refinement, and maybe that's another opportunity to sort of expand those to include a scenario like what's being suggested. Yeah.
I can probably give you 100 Niagara on the Lake alone. So I mean, it's ridiculous for them to just automatically revert it back to a natural.
Well, the amendment is posted, but what you're suggesting, Councillor Dart, is something entirely different. Okay. So then the amendment has been moved and seconded, so we have to defeat the amendment and then put yours on.
Madam Chair, we did change it a little bit in the process. So what I've suggested here is that when the landowner be informed when a designation for their land is proposed. So it goes a little bit further than what I had suggested and a little closer to what Councillor Dart had suggested.
Can you repeat that? It's on there, okay.
So the change was inform the landowner when a change in designation of their land is proposed.
Rather than accomplished, okay?
Right.
Councillor Marshall, you have,
To the amendment?
yes.
Yeah, I'm a little confused. It sounds like this is a policy, 4 years or whatever, well-defined. Is that when we expect the ministry to notify somebody? And how would they know that it's been fallow for 4 years? And do they update the mapping on a regular basis? Just to say this, it really isn't helpful. I don't think it's going to happen. They have no way logistically to actually do that. I too am concerned about it, and I'm concerned when it goes to other municipalities. We're going to highlight, do they understand the consequences of this? I hear Councillor Nunziata with some serious concern. I look at the Welland map and I say, wow, can we appeal things prior to this becoming law and things of that sort? And that might reflect in this amendment, because while I appreciate the amendment, I don't think it's possible.
Well, surely there's a registry of landowners, and when they propose something like this, there must be a way for them to notify these landowners that there is something significant proposed on their holding.
There's references to, they'll let them know when there's a change in the designation of their land. Now, that would be
yeah, but
when it becomes
this is something
law,
much different.
And then well, maybe if that's what it is, if it's different, please tell me, Madam Chair. Do they notify them now that this is about to occur? Or secondly, are they to notify them after 4 or 5 years? Because surely they'll know that you don't do your grapes in the middle of the field for 4 or 5 years. So I'm just not getting it, but maybe you can enlighten me, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I'll let the mover of the amendment do that. Well, no, Councillor Dart, you had.
Okay. The chances of them even knowing it would be slim, unless it's on a roadway or anything else. Mine's right in the middle of my farm. I can barely see it, and my house sits up on top. So the chances of them seeing some of this, but if they do find some, then if they're happen to drive along there's a lot of farms on main thoroughfares, and if they leave it fallow for a while, they can see it. I don't know if they'd even, the chances are probably very slim, but you know what? All you need is one farmer to lose 100 acres of land, and you got a big problem.
Is there periodic aerial mapping that may impact in your situation?
Yes, there is, but I don't know how scrutinized those are either. I know.
All right, let's, first of all, Councillor Marshall, you've registered your confusion about this change.
I've registered my confusion.
Correct. Now, Councillor Hodgson, to the amendment. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to take a step back for a moment, because just with the wording here, there's an important distinction. The exercise to identify and map an agricultural system does in fact involve the designation of lands for agriculture. But in our discussions at the Alliance yesterday, and our staff are part of the working team that informed that group, it was clear that the heritage system is a policy overlay. It's not considered, like in the lingo of planners, it's important that we keep that distinction. The natural heritage system is an overlay that goes over all of the different land use designations. So in this amendment, we should probably say a change in designation or policy overlay on their lands, because there's two things happening here, and I think we want to capture that. My other, yep, okay. Something like designation or policy overlay of their land is probably clear enough. But it's because those are two different kind of distinct exercises. And then I just wanted to comment with respect to asking the Ministry of Natural Resources to inform. It's all well and fine for us to ask that, but I don't think that's a high success,
No.
direction. But we may be able to find, we all know what a kind of a disaster the NPCA's exercise, that they were duly following provincial direction to remap the floodplain. And all of a sudden, the absence of that direct on-the-ground contact, it is important, it really is critical, but it probably isn't going to happen by, MNR have like one person, staff person dedicated to, I don't know, half of Southern Ontario or something. They don't have that many staff. They're not actually going to go door to door. So I don't think that's a high success direction, but we can still maybe make an amendment and do an ask that is very pointed in how critical it is that there be timelines for compliance by the regions. That's because this is ultimately when the metal hits the road here. We will be asked ultimately, after refining maps, we'll be asked to make sure that when we do an official plan, and we'll be doing an official plan update, or not just an update, we're actually going to do a whole new regional plan, I understand. So that exercise is where we're going to maybe ask MNR to provide financial resources to ensure that we have very intensive community consultations. And that's where the actual person with the property will interact with the, whoever, whether it's our staff here or whether it's a consultant who's doing the agricultural policy exercise or the natural heritage mapping exercise. That's where the consultations will probably have to occur. Okay. But I don't think there's anything wrong with us asking for them to fund that. Right. Because we have a pretty good example of how everything can come off the rails if they just expect us to comply and really not do a whole lot of consultations in that exercise. So those are just two suggestions. I'm not quite sure how the wording goes, but
I think we have it.
Okay.
And I'll ask the mover and the seconder if they agree with this change to the amendment.
Okay. Yes, Madam Chair.
All right, and who was the seconder? Maves? Okay. All right, so we're going to, Councillor Maves, you wanted to talk on the amendment, please?
We've been down this road before. I remember being at the Conservation Authority when everyone complained to the Conservation Authority that the Conservation Authority changed the mapping of their land, changed the designations of their land, changed the rules and regulations surrounding their land, and it wasn't the Conservation Authority, it was MNR. So MNR does their flyovers or their satellite dish reviews of pieces of property whenever they want. They don't warn you. We're having a look at everybody's land again. They just all of a sudden remap it. And they inform you by just posting it on their website. And so you can't say, Ministry of Natural Resources Enforcement should be requested to inform. They'll say, we do, right? You need to say directly inform. Because you directly inform each landowner is even better. Because we've been down this road for the last people before me, Hodgson and other people longer than me, but they're just going to keep mapping and keep changing and keep sterilizing land. It's the biggest destruction of private property rights, of private wealth, and of economic potential that I think the world has ever seen. And they don't care, and it's ideologically driven, and they're just going to continue to put in more rules and more regulations and more mapping until they just continually sterilize all land. So you need to say, because this will go nowhere, Councillor Hodgson's right, they're just going to say thanks very much. But we already inform people by putting it on a website. So if you at least try to refine it to say directly inform each landowner when it changes this. Now they got to go to their maps because they know everybody who owns every piece of land. They've got their name, address, phone number. It's all logged. They know who they're doing it to. You guys call them directly and tell them you're changing the designation in their land. At least let's add that in there. And
all right, so what are the words exactly here?
I would just add directly inform each landowner.
Okay, directly inform each landowner. And is that okay with the mover and the, Councillor Timms?
I am the
Councillor
second.
Maves, you're the one, okay, thank you. The commissioner has a
Yeah,
comment?
just, and it's, you know, I do support the direction, but just to manage expectations,
Yeah, we know that.
We don't
you know,
have
the
any
likelihood is highly unlikely, because I don't think there, and the reason being is, I don't believe that there's a provincial regulation, and this is what they'll default to, that requires them to do that. What they're required to do is to post it on the EBR, and they say that they provided notice to everybody. So just
So we're aware. Councillor Easton, do you have a comment to the amendment?
Yes, Madam Chair, what is our obligation at the regional level and at the local area municipality level to inform the public that this policy is imminent?
Eric, did you get the question?
So I can respond. There is no obligation until such time as there's a, Madam Chair, unless there's a policy that gets introduced into the regional official plan, in which case then we have to provide notice in a manner that's prescribed by the legislation. So until there's an instrument, a policy instrument adopted by the council or initiated by the council, there's no obligation to do anything.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, Councillor Easton. Are you ready for the question on the amendment, please? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, and it's carried unanimously. And moving to the main motion, as amended, all in favor? Any opposed? And one opposed, and that's carried. Could I have a mover and a seconder for 37 and also for 33, which was added to the bottom of this list? Councillor Nunziata, a seconder, please.
No second.
Councillor Easton.
Yeah.
And we have really discussed 37 while we've been doing all of this. Are you ready for any questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Hodgson.
Sorry that I just wanted to, again, just quickly update. You heard that we had a meeting of the Golden Horseshoe Food and Farming Alliance yesterday. It was actually a working lunch over which we had discussions regarding the submissions that are being made on behalf of the 7 regions and cities of the Golden Horseshoe about this very same subject. What's important, I think it's important to stress to you, there's no joy over the natural heritage system exercise. And I would say to you that there's pretty good evidence that it is, in fact, I think I heard maybe Bart say that it's ideologically driven, and there's a lot to that. It's quite aggressive, and it has an impact on farmers, not necessarily stop you from doing what you want to do tomorrow, but once that overlay mapping of the heritage system is imposed on the land, it will, over the long term, be very difficult to undo. So that point is being very, very clearly made. We also are bringing forward the point with respect to fallow, putting lands into fallow is a best farm practice. In fact, it's done, and it has implications. Once it fallow for a number of years, so if we saw this, the mapping is going to capture it after 4 years. There's a lot of land that is fallow. It's going to be in that report and that submission as well, to point out that, in fact, it's not just about the practice of putting land into a fallow condition. It's about sometimes some of the investments that farmers have to make, particularly if you think of tree fruit orchards, vineyards, those kinds of things. Sometimes, particularly younger farmers, are going to take a number of years before they can actually finalize the upgrading plans that they have on their operations. So that's being brought forward too. The other thing I wanted to point out is that OFA are well represented Ontario Federation of Agriculture have representatives there. They'll be making submissions as well, but they're very active on the alliance as well. So this is, the issues that are being raised are being, once again, it's very frustrating because for 15 years, we've been trying to say, and this, I think you've all heard this thing, is you want to save the farmland, what you need to do is save the farmer. So when it comes to the agricultural system planning, this is roughly what the farm community has been asking for, because what it does is it acknowledges that there's way more to farming than the soil. That's the fundamental that underlies this exercise. And it is what the farm organizations and individual farmers, the landowners, have been asking for this recognition in a planning exercise. So what I think we want to do is look at them in kind of two different ways. The farm system acknowledges that to farm, there's a whole layer upon layer upon layer of, as Eric was trying to point out, of infrastructure that supports that activity. And that what we're hoping the outcome province-wide will be that, in fact, and at a minimum, municipalities, when they update their official plans, they will have to, in fact, have a section in your official plan that speaks to the agricultural system as an economic activity in their municipality. And I can assure you that does not happen everywhere these days. It very, very often, like the farming has always been considered to be a bit of a placeholder before you develop the land. And I think all of us know, just after what we saw, the presentation today, how important an economic driver of the agri-food industry is. Well, you've got to protect the agricultural system because it's one of the fundamental food stocks for that economic driver. And so at any rate, I just wanted to draw that differentiation. It's not the agricultural system. In this case, it could turn into a boogeyman, but we're hoping it doesn't. We're hoping what it does is raises the profile of the human resources that drive agriculture and food and puts it on an equal footing with other important economic activity. So I think those are the only comments I really wanted to make, but there is a great deal of concern, and it's ongoing, and it's frustrating to no end for those of us who have been involved in agricultural planning over the years. That once again, I think the wording we're going to have in the Alliance submission will talk about the primacy of agriculture. So that means when you want to overlay natural health systems, you have to take into account the impact of anything. Any mapping exercise has to be measured in terms of its impact on agriculture. So that's a relatively new concept. We don't know how, I know that our planning departments don't know how the rules will come out yet on doing agricultural impact studies, but that's where a lot of people are hoping we can get to. So there's some good stuff here, but I take Councillor Annunciata's comments regarding lands in a certain zone. It's frustrating to try to get exceptions.
It's frustrating in many cases.
Yeah, provinces don't like making exceptions. All departments, like even in agriculture, OMAFRA says a farmer is a farmer is a farmer, and yet we have farmers in the Greenbelt, and we all know that they live under different types of controls. So, but anyway, that's an uphill, worthy battle, but uphill.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Maves?
I'm glad Councillor Hodgson said that, because I had a statement that'll change maybe into a question of him and the Commissioner. So, and you'll know this, Chair, in Niagara Falls, in the farmlands that are left, some are actually inside the urban boundary, some are just outside the urban boundary. And a lot of the European immigrants that came to Niagara Falls, and I'm thinking of the Serbians like Kosta Radulovic and the Italian families and the Polish families that came to Niagara Falls. I remember Mr. Radulovic, who's passed now, used to say to me, he used to recite Dudley Kravitz's line that a man without land is nobody. And so a lot of these European immigrants, when they came here, bought land. And they only bought land as an investment. That was their retirement. They weren't going to develop it. They weren't farmers, but they would utilize it to whatever extent they could. They thought it was a secure investment. They didn't trust banks. They bought land. And they sat on the land and they maybe chopped down a tree, or maybe they had some little tiny structure on there. And so as time ticks by and the rules change on these people, and somebody next door to them all of a sudden have left their land fallow, and it's not wetland, it's got scrub on it, and the scrub's getting thicker and thicker and thicker, and the trees that are there fall, and then water gets in between the fall, and all of a sudden someone comes around and says, sorry, you got a wetland. And the guy just lost everything. He can't ever touch his land anymore. It's done. It's mapped. You have no say. He usually doesn't even know till 10 years later, maybe when he wills it to his kids and his kids find it's wetland. So guys got wise to this, and they all started clearing their land. And they go and they would contract their 5 little acres or 10 acres to some farmer. And the farmer would come in and clear it, and he'd plant soybeans. And a lot of this land is garbage land. It's the Willoughby clay. You can't, it's barely possible to have weeds grow on the stuff. But these farmers would come in because they could get some corn to grow. They could get some soybeans to grow. So they'd start planting it with soybeans. So now Mr. Radulovich and all these other people in Niagara think, okay, I got it now. I'm farming the land. It can't turn into a wetland because it's being actively farmed. And now the province is going to turn around and say to them, oh no, now it's farmland forevermore. And it's not worth anything because you can't farm anything and it's on garbage land. But because it's being farmed, it's called good agriculture and sometimes primary agriculture. And now they're screwed. What do I tell all these people? What do I tell them to do with the property now? Like, I'm asking you, Councillor Hodgson, like, if it's the primacy of agriculture now that it's going to come over, and this map, everything that's not the city of Niagara Falls, the city of St. Catharines, and the city of Welland is apparently prime agricultural. As I read this, it's brown is all prime agricultural. And then on top of it, there's a grid that says it's good agricultural, which is lesser than prime agriculture. But what do I tell these people who are sitting on garbage land, as Councillor Diodati always jokes, this land is so bad that when the rabbits go for a walk, they take a lunch.
Okay, Councillor, thank you.
I'm serious. I'd like to know, this mapping is now going to basically call everything, as I'm looking at it, agriculture, and no one will ever be anything to do with it because of the primacy of agriculture. Could someone please enlighten me as to what I go and tell Mr. Radulovich and
We'll think about it. We're going to move along.
No, I want an answer.
You want an answer? I don't know if anyone has an answer, Councillor.
Am I reading the map right? And am I interpreting what you've just said right? That they can't keep farming it now, and they can't leave it fallow.
All right, I think Eric has an answer. Eric, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Just to clarify, what's been identified on there is good general land, which is the hatched sort of lattice pattern. That's already identified through the existing regional policy plan as a regional official plan as agricultural land that has policies associated with it that protect it from development. For the most part, what's been identified as prime agricultural area by the province is consistent with that. So it's not necessarily a case of now we've identified this as agricultural land and previously it wasn't. It has been identified as that for quite a while.
No, just a sec. The map shows brown is prime agricultural.
Correct.
The stuff that's just a grid is good general agriculture. There is nothing that's just a grid. It's all brown in a grid, or it's all brown.
Perhaps we should have illustrated the map in a different manner, but the grid is overlaid over top of the brown. So it's two separate things that
okay.
That are
so
there.
the map is somewhat inaccurate.
A little bit. I'd blame the mapper.
Okay.
Whoever that may be.
Okay, I got nothing to tell Mr. Well, Mr. Dulovitz is passed, as I said. But.
You can't talk to him.
Okay, that's at least somewhat comforting that not every piece of brown on that map is actually prime agricultural.
Right. Okay, Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Easton?
Madam Chairman, I've been thinking for some time that just like the Greenbelt came along because we weren't really paying attention to the way we were protecting our land, that we're now going to have to start looking at what is being grown in certain areas in our communities. And in Lincoln, we have a lot of greenhouses on prime agricultural land. So when we're confronted with a challenge like this, and we've already started having this conversation with Greenhouse about going to land in Lincoln above the escarpment, that is really this type of land that Councillor Maves is talking about.
Development.
Well, a greenhouse.
Yeah.
Industrial development,
Correct.
an innovation center, whatever you want to call it. And this is what we've been looking at. And I realize, again, that this reorganization of land is just going to drive people crazy because it is just so socialistic. But when you have 65% of your land under protection, and there isn't any more, you have no choice but to start looking at what you're growing on that land and what you're going to grow on that land and how in the future in terms of intensity of growth, et cetera. So I don't know, I see this as the next phase of this. I really do, because if the land is going to be zoned as agriculture, whether it's horrible agriculture or the very best, you've got to have something on there. You've got to have the highest and best production, even if it goes from, you know, Z up to A. I don't see any other choice that we have. It won't happen in our lifetime, but I think that's the next phase of it. And I do think that impact is going to get in here pretty quick, because once these lands have been receive a different designation, I absolutely believe that that the 25%, if we're not forced to decrease it, it'll disappear altogether. I see that happening.
Okay. And it'll also drive up the price of any land that's available, and that's the truth. All right, are you ready for the question? All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. I'm going to ask the committee, please, if we can defer the presentation on, sorry, where is it? And report. Khaldun's presentation and the report, PDS 40, to our next meeting. It's not time sensitive, please. Councillor Maves and Councillor Easton, all in favor? And that's carried. I'd like a motion, please, if we can, to move the consent items in block. Councillor Maves, Councillor Hodgson, are there any questions on the consent items? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. And then we have one confidential item. Sorry? One confidential item. Are there any questions on this confidential item that we have to move in camera for? Councillor Nunziata, do you have a question that you want to go in camera for?
I have no problem discussing the matter not in camera. I mean, if I'll leave it, I'll defer to staff, but.
All right, or you just want to move it? A seconder, Councillor Maves. And yeah, all in favor? Yes.
I do have a question to the report. The discussion is about the MOU between the city,
well, Councillor
12
Marshall,
cities, the
sorry.
Region.
Not if you leave.
Okay.
If you leave, it's less than correct. You are quorum, Councillor. You are quorum.
Please sit down.
Yes. It's 10. Did you count me? Yes. Count me every time. Councillor Nunziata, did you have a comment?
John Turner Award tonight. I know there's members here that will be attending that. You may want to go home and shower and scrub, so we are pressed for time, but go ahead, Madam Chair.
All right. Yes, I call the question. All in favor?
Madam Chair, my question was, are the municipalities aware that this three-party MOUs are being discussed? My understanding, my city council doesn't seem to be aware, but staff probably are. This came up at the Conservation Authority, and I wasn't aware that this was even being discussed. So other than the fact that we have to review this MOU relationship every so many years. So I guess number one question is, are the municipality councils aware of this discussion?
Through you, Madam Chair, the councils are not, but the area planners, we've talked about it on more than one occasion, and they're quite anxious to move forward with a revised MOU, which will then go to their council.
And this is the first time that this council has been aware of the extent of the change in relationship between the two. This is the first report that indicates to this council that the staff are discussing a change.
That is correct. So we weren't about to notify local councils until we got authorization from regional council to move forward with the MOU update.
So further, so perhaps we can have a redacted confidential report that we have done in the past, so that some aspects can be discussed publicly and some are considered human resources matters. I know staff would take a little bit of work to sort out what can be done that way, but I'd hate to see the whole thing done in camera because there are human resources issues embedded in the report.
What I would suggest, Madam Chair, is if there's favorable consideration to the recommendations, and then it's passed at council, we can do a letter from either the commissioner's office or from the clerk, advising them that we've entered into a process to update the MOUs. That can go to the clerk of each municipality after the report and recommendations are adopted. And that letter can contain as much information as we can. I mean, that would be the easiest way to do it.
Well, I will bet you that there will be, this won't be very in camera by the time we get to Thursday. Thank you.
Councillor Augustine?
Just to build on what Councillor Tim said, I don't understand, Councillor Nunziata, why is this in camera? Why is the report in camera? I've read it a number of times. I don't see how it. So I'd like to move that we release the report.
All right, so you want to put a motion on the floor that we discuss the report in open session?
Yeah. That the report be released.
That the report be released?
Yeah, I don't know why I don't even know why it was confidential in the first place.
All right, well, Commissioner, can you explain that?
Through you, Madam Chair, there was a concern that there are some staffing implications at both the NPCA and at the region that are sort of implied through the report. And so there was a labor relations issue there to sort of contain that.
Nobody's named. We don't know how many. Like
Right.
It should not be in closed session.
So that your motion is that it be released?
Yeah.
Okay.
After council adoption.
After council adoption, of course.
Well, I think it should be released now. Like, I know we can't do that. Somebody put it in closed session, but I don't think it needs to be in closed session. I don't think it meets the criteria.
All right, that the report be released after adoption by council. Yes.
So that was the same recommendation I had.
Yeah.
Right.
Session, Madam Chair. So I have no problem. As the chair of the NPCA, I have no problem with this report being discussed in open session. Again, I defer to staff and their judgment about moving it into closed session here. But from the NPCA's perspective, we have no concerns.
And neither does anyone else, I guess. So all in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. I'm releasing it. Okay? Right. And we've approved the report.
Yeah.
And we've already approved the report.
Oh, sorry, that was just the amendment to add it to be released. Sorry.
Okay, so now all in favor of the report? Okay, please. I imagine you can ask at any time.
Ask for deferral to 1 second. So I'd like to have input from the other municipalities, including mine.
Is this time sensitive, Commissioner?
I haven't released it yet.
No, after council has approved it, that's what they, but is it time sensitive? It is.
There's budget implications at both the NPCA and at the region that we want to move forward with. I mean, that's the time sensitivity.
So what is your pleasure, committee?
Yeah, I know.
All right.
They want to discuss the deferral.
You can't discuss the deferral anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Seconder to get it on the floor.
All right, is there a seconder to put the deferral on the floor? Councillor Augustine. So there's no discussion on the deferral. So call the question, a recorded vote, please.
Vote is open.
This will be close.
Is mine recorded? I voted no. I voted no, so that's, I don't know why it's not there. All
Councillor
right,
Beatty
so we're
is,
not deferring it,
pardon
we're
me,
just,
Madam Chair, Councillor Beatty is marked there. He's not here.
okay.
Oh, he just darts.
Can we just use hands?
Yes, please.
He's not signing off.
So the clerk is now expecting me to sign in,
Dart's not signing off.
okay?
Thank you.
That's okay. It's a recorded vote.
Do it again?
Okay, ready? The vote is open.
Moving to defer. This is the deferral motion.
So it's lost. It's a tie. There's no deferral. So now we will go on to discuss the report. Can we have a list, please? The report's on the floor. Speaking to the recommendations. Anyone? Where is this? Augustine? Councillor Augustine? Are you on the list to speak to the recommendations?
Again, this, I don't think it's time sensitive, people do, but I mean, this is going to take a while. The last time we went through this process, you know, we had input from the local area municipalities. We had like this, to expect this to happen overnight and have implications for 2018, I think is wrong-headed. Because we want to make sure we do this right if we're looking at this. I think there's been also, which something that isn't contained here, is there's also been negotiations and discussions since 2008 with this whole understanding and work plan between area municipalities and the region. So that isn't captured here. Now maybe the NPCA wasn't involved in that, but I'm sure they were involved in those discussions. So can we hear about that?
Who would like to speak to that?
It might predate the commissioner, it might predate all the staff that are in the room.
You want to go back to 2008?
No, I don't want to go back to 2008. I don't want to go back to 1997, Madam Chair. But what I'm saying is that we've been working on this, and since 2008, there's been another upgrade. So I don't think the report is quite clear that there's been another change. I think other councillors that have served around this horseshoe will recognize that we've done other updates since 2007, 2008.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't, and it's going to take longer than this, so I don't think we need to rush this through.
Right, thank you for that. Councillor Nunziata?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, the original language in the original MOU calls for the updating to be effected within 2 to 3 years. So it's time to update the MOU. So I will say that the first step of that updating policy is to approach our lower tier partners and their planning staff. Ultimately, they're the ones that have to plan for their staffing issues, for their budgeting issues, and to see what kind of impact any service changes will have. So those reports, I'm sure, will be written by individual planning staff. Those reports will go to the respective municipal councils, and it'll be incumbent upon those municipal councils to either accept the recommendations of their individual planning staffs or don't respect them. But you have to start the process somewhere. So this does kickstart their process. So I will say this, the MOU and the related protocols have succeeded as tools. And we rely upon them to manage our relationships and to avoid duplication of services. And we believe at the NPCA that the timing is correct to make sure that the changes are implemented. So we've been working with the region, and certainly the region is going to be working with their municipal partners, and we respect that process. So to Councillor Augustine's point that this somehow is being rushed through, it's not the case, but you need a starting point. So the starting point is this motion that authorizes the start of that process. So I'm fully supportive of this, and I look forward to hearing the comments from our lower tier partners and the municipal councils moving forward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Maves?
Thank you. This authorizes staff to renew and negotiate and update. So it's not like you're doing anything other than having staff enter into a review and negotiations. So you're not, this isn't jamming anything through, let's get started, because it's already October and you need to know the impacts of it in 2018 budget deliberations to not pass. It's foolish in my view.
Thank you. Councillor Timms?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I fully support the motion as it's presented, and now that it is a public notion, it is, I think, important that we get started on the review and negotiate. Nothing will be settled until it comes back to council, but this opportunity starts the process, as Member Annunziata had said. It needs to be done. It is time sensitive from that point of view. So we need to start now with the review and negotiate so that the lower tier, all three parties, well, 13, 14 parties, I guess, are aware of what the intention is. And so the council is, this regional council is aware of what staff is suggesting or recommending. So this allows all that to happen, and it says review and negotiate. So it doesn't say agree or settle or endorse or anything else.
Starts the process.
So it's important to get this thing started, and the public is, that it's a very public process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Marshall?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm just a little concerned that I'm sure staff is expecting our direction as to how you conduct yourself in these negotiations, because we should have some direction for staff. Is that appropriate? And that brings up a little conundrum that half of them are represented at the board. Now, can you serve two masters becomes the question. So as simple as it is, it's very complex. And I don't even want an answer to the first one. You will get my direction, but I don't know if you take it or not. So that's why I wanted input from other people that aren't necessarily on the board or a member of this committee from the local municipalities. I'm hearing I'm going to get that. But why have negotiations when we haven't given instructions is a legitimate question, and I expect some answer to it, but not.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hodgson?
Well, yeah, in view of the fact that this is a protocol and an MOU between all of the local area municipalities, the region, NPCA, I think it's fairly friendly if we amended number 2 to say at the end, the last sentence, between the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, Niagara Region, and the local area municipalities. Because I think that's the way it was done, because it does have implications for everybody. And if the movers think that's friendly, then that's fine.
So, yeah, just, that's it. Who are the mover and the seconder of this? Annunziata and Maves. Is that a friendly amendment?
I just have a question. Is that an accurate statement, though, that it's actually an MOU that everyone's a signatory to, or is it just the region and the region is acting on behalf of the municipalities and they're the only signatory?
Yes. Commissioner has a comment.
So, yes, through you, Madam Chair. So the two documents are linked, right? Because the protocol between the Conservation Authority and the region I would say that the MOU between the region, the NPCA, and the LAMs is really derivative of what ends up being negotiated in the protocol with the NPCA and the region. Right? So, like, they're linked that way. So the LAMs are definitely going to want to know and understand and have input into the protocol between the region and the Conservation Authority, even though that they're not, it doesn't directly apply to them. So they will have to endorse it, right?
And Madam Chair, too, just to that, because like I remember as a mayor, like we spent a lot of time. There was a lot of public consultation with different stakeholder groups, et cetera, and we all signed off on it. And I think because it involves a lot of, it's not just the relationship between the Niagara region and NPCA. It was a relationship between local area municipalities. That was a big chunk of it, and the region, because we went to common planning language, we went to common planning protocols for advertising. There's a lot to it, and that's really important.
So the amendment is to number 2 to include Niagara region, exactly what it says in the above, in number 1. And that's a friendly amendment, Councillor Annunziata, Councillor Maves? Okay, Councillor Annunziata? Okay, so I'll call the motion as amended. Yes, all in favor? Yes.
Vote is open.
Haddock. What does it smell? And it carries. 8-2. Thank you very much, everyone.
Motion as amended? That was just the amendment.
No, that was the motion as amendment.
Okay.
Yes. I felt sorry for Councillor Barrick this morning when he left the chair because he'd been here for 3 hours, but I've been here for almost 4, so thank you, thank you. Just a little bit of applause for all of you, actually, not just me. And enjoy your evening. Thank you. Our next meeting is?
Wednesday, October 18th.
Wednesday, October 18th.